Welcome, fellow dreamer. You have found a place of calm and rest. This evening, we're going to explore the remarkable story of photography, a journey through light and shadow, where curious inventors discovered how to capture fleeting moments and preserve them forever. We'll uncover the gentle magic of chemistry, meeting light, and how this beautiful fusion transformed the way humanity sees, remembers, and shares the world. Accompanied by soothing music and abstract imagery, we'll be uncovering little-known wonders and fascinating stories that gently feed your curiosity as you drift towards sleep. If you enjoy these calm adventures with us, don't be shy. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment to help other smart sleepers dream too. And now, take a deep breath. Let your body sink into comfort, and allow your mind to rest and your eyes to close as the tale unfolds before you. Long before anyone could capture a photograph, humans felt the profound urge to preserve what they saw. Our ancestors looked at the world around them, at the faces of people they loved, at animals moving across plains, at the light falling through leaves, and they wanted to hold on to these fleeting moments. They wanted to remember, they wanted to share what they had witnessed with others who were not there, and with people who would come after them, in times they would never see. In caves across Europe, Africa, and Asia, people mixed pigments from earth and charcoal and blood, and by flickering firelight, they pressed their hands against stone walls, leaving outlines that still speak to us across tens of thousands of years. They painted the animals they hunted and feared, the bison and horses and deer, capturing not just their forms, but somehow their movement, their spirit, their presence in that ancient world. These were not photographs, but they served a similar purpose. They said, "This existed, I saw it, and I want you to see it too." As civilizations grew more complex, so did the methods of capturing images. Egyptian artists developed precise conventions for representing the human form in profile, creating portraits of pharaohs and queens that would survive millennia in tomb paintings. Greek and Roman painters created remarkably lifelike frescoes, and the volcanic ash that buried Pompeii in the year 79 preserved portraits so vivid that the people depicted seemed to gaze at us across the centuries, with personalities intact, their eyes following us as we look back at them. For most of human history, if you wanted an image of yourself or someone you loved, you needed an artist. Portrait painters became skilled craftspeople, learning to mix colors, to understand how light falls on skin, to capture not just physical features, but something of a person's character and presence. A painted portrait was expensive and time-consuming. An artist might work for days or weeks to complete a single likeness. Sitting for a portrait meant remaining still for hours while the painter worked. Only the wealthy could afford this kind of permanent image-making, this defiance of time's passage. But something else was happening alongside these artistic traditions. Curious minds were discovering that images could be created not just by human hands, but by light itself. In darkened rooms across the ancient world, people noticed something magical. When light passed through a small hole into a dark space, it projected an image of the outside world onto the opposite wall. But this image was upside down, reversed, mysterious. The Chinese philosopher Mozi wrote about this phenomenon more than 2,000 years ago. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle observed it. Islamic scholars in the medieval period studied it carefully and described it in detail. This device, this darkened chamber with a small opening, became known by a Latin name, camera obscura, meaning simply dark room. By the Renaissance, artists and scientists were building camera obscuras deliberately, using them as tools. Some were entire rooms that people could enter, watching the outside world projected onto walls in dim, moving images. Others were portable boxes, small enough to carry, with a lens to focus the projected image more sharply. Artists discovered that the camera obscura could help them achieve more accurate perspective and proportion in their paintings. They could trace the projected image, capturing architectural details or landscape features with precision that might take hours to measure and sketch by eye alone. The Dutch master Johannes Vermeer likely used a camera obscura to achieve the remarkable clarity and subtle light effects in his interior scenes. The projected image gave him a different way of seeing, a way that emphasized certain optical effects. The glow of light on a wall, the soft blur of objects in the background. The camera obscura revealed something profound, that light itself, traveling in straight lines, could create images without any human intervention. These images appeared and disappeared moment by moment, changing as clouds moved across the sun, as people walked past the opening, as the world outside continued its endless motion. The images were beautiful, often more beautiful than the scene appeared to the naked eye, because the camera obscura somehow distilled and concentrated the light into something magical on that viewing screen. But here was the heartbreak, the limitation that would haunt artists and scientists for centuries. These images could not be kept, they could not be saved, they existed only in the moment of their projection. You could trace them with a pencil, you could paint over them, you could watch them for hours, but the image itself, that light-painted picture, would vanish the instant you let daylight back into the chamber, close the aperture, or open the door, and the image dissolved into nothing, as though it had never existed. For hundreds of years, people stood in darkened rooms and portable camera obscuras, watching these phantom images dance across screens and walls, and they dreamed of capturing them, of making them permanent somehow. They could see what a camera could do. They could imagine a future where these light-drawn pictures might be preserved, but they did not yet know how. The camera obscura showed them the destination, but not the path. It demonstrated that light could draw pictures, but not how to keep those pictures from fading away. What was needed was not a better box, not a better lens, not a darker room. What was needed was a fundamental understanding of how certain materials responded to light itself, how substances might be changed, permanently altered, by the very illumination that created the projected image. Some experimenters tried coating surfaces with light-sensitive materials, noticing that certain substances darkened when exposed to sunlight. But these early attempts produced only crude silhouettes and temporary effects. The materials that darkened in light often continued darkening uncontrollably until the entire surface was uniformly dark. There seemed to be no way to stop the process, no way to fix the image in place once it had formed. The camera obscura remained a tracing aid, a viewing device, a philosophical demonstration of optics, but not yet a tool for permanent image-making. Artists continued painting portraits by hand. Travelers continued sketching landscapes they wanted to remember. People held the faces of loved ones only in memory, which faded and changed over time, like those disappearing projections. But the dream persisted. The possibility haunted those who had seen what light could do when given a surface to draw upon. Somewhere in the intersection of optics and chemistry, of light and matter, there must be a method, a process, a technique that would allow those projected images to be captured and kept. The camera obscura had asked a question that demanded an answer. The image was there, created by light itself, more accurate and complete than any hand could draw. Surely there must be a way to make it stay. The artists and inventors who worked with camera obscuras could project beautiful images onto screens and walls, but they faced a frustrating limitation. No matter how perfect the projected scene appeared, it vanished the moment the light was blocked or the apparatus moved. The image was temporary, ephemeral, as fleeting as a reflection in water. What they needed was a surface that could somehow remember the light that touched it, a material that would transform permanently when exposed to illumination. The answer lay not in optics or mechanics, but in chemistry. The story of photography begins with a peculiar observation about certain substances and their relationship with sunlight. Long before anyone dreamed of cameras as we know them, people noticed that some materials changed color when left in bright light. Fabrics faded, certain dyes lost their vibrancy. These weren't mysteries exactly, but they were curiosities that suggested light carried some kind of invisible power to alter matter itself. Among the substances that showed remarkable sensitivity to light were compounds containing silver, silver chloride, silver bromide, and silver nitrate, all darkened when exposed to sunlight, shifting from pale cream or white to deep purple, gray, or black. Alchemists and early chemists had documented these reactions, noting them in their careful records without fully understanding why they occurred. The transformation seemed almost magical, as if the sunlight itself was being captured and held within the material. In the 18th century, a German professor named Johann Heinrich Schulze conducted experiments that would prove crucial to the future of photography. Around 1725, Schulze was actually investigating phosphorescence, trying to create materials that would glow in the dark. He mixed chalk with nitric acid that happened to contain some dissolved silver, creating a white paste. When he left this mixture near a window, he noticed something unexpected. The portion exposed to sunlight had turned dark purple, while the shaded areas remained white. Schulze's curiosity led him further. He cut letters and words from paper and placed them against bottles filled with his silver chalk mixture, then set the bottles in sunlight. The exposed areas darkened, but where the paper blocked the light, the mixture stayed pale. When he removed the paper cutouts, there on the surface of the mixture were the shapes of the letters, inscribed in darkness and light. He had created temporary images using only chemistry and sunshine. Schulze was careful to note that it was light, not heat, causing the transformation. He proved this by showing that the mixture would not darken when heated in complete darkness. The images Schulze created wouldn't last. When exposed to more light, the pale areas would eventually darken too, until the entire surface turned uniformly dark and the image disappeared. He had discovered how to create pictures with light-sensitive chemicals, but not how to preserve them. Still, his experiments demonstrated something profound. Light could draw with chemical substances as surely as a pen drew with ink. Other experimenters built on this knowledge throughout the later 1700s. Carl Wilhelm Scheele, a Swedish chemist, investigated silver chloride more thoroughly in the 1770s. He discovered that different colors of light affected silver compounds at different rates. Violet light caused the fastest darkening, while red light produced little effect. This was early evidence that light consisted of different components, each with different properties, though the full understanding of the light spectrum was still developing. Scheele also found that ammonia could dissolve the unchanged silver chloride, leaving behind only the darkened portions. This discovery pointed toward a solution for the permanence problem. If you could somehow stop the unchanged areas from continuing to darken, you might preserve an image indefinitely. The concept that would later be called fixing had begun to take shape, though practical application remained distant. The silver salts possessed another remarkable property. Their sensitivity to light made them capable of recording incredibly fine detail. Unlike paint or pencil, which created images through the deliberate movement of human hands, silver compounds reacted to light wherever that light touched them. They could, in theory, record every subtle variation in brightness across a scene, every delicate gradation from brilliant white to deepest shadow. The precision possible with light-sensitive chemistry far exceeded what even the most skilled artist could achieve by hand. Yet turning these chemical curiosities into practical picture-making remained an enormous challenge. The silver compounds were temperamental. They needed to be applied evenly to a surface. They required specific conditions of moisture and temperature. They had to be sensitive enough to respond in reasonable time periods, but not so sensitive that they darkened in dim light or during handling. And most vexingly, once an image formed, it had to be stabilized somehow, prevented from continuing to darken until it vanished. Natural philosophers and chemists understood that they were approaching something extraordinary. If light could be made to draw its own pictures through chemical reactions, the implications stretched in every direction. Artists might capture perfect likenesses without years of training. Scientists could record fleeting phenomena too quick for sketching. Travelers could bring home not just descriptions, but actual images of distant places. The projected scenes from camera obscuras, those beautiful but temporary visions, might finally be made permanent. Some substances besides silver showed light sensitivity. Certain iron compounds changed color when exposed to sunlight. The natural pigment called Tyrian purple, extracted from sea snails, faded noticeably in bright light. Plant-based dyes shifted and altered, but the silver salts remained the most responsive, the most predictable, and the most promising for anyone hoping to capture images. Their transformations were dramatic and relatively fast, and the resulting darks were deep and rich. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, the pieces of the puzzle were scattered across Europe in laboratories and studies. The camera obscura could project perfect images. Silver chemistry could respond to light and record variations in brightness. Experimenters understood that unexposed chemicals needed to be removed or neutralized to make images permanent. What remained was for someone to bring all these elements together in the right combination, with sufficient patience and ingenuity to work through the endless technical difficulties. That moment approached, slowly but inevitably, as inventors turned their attention toward making the dream of light-captured images into reality. The stage was set, the chemistry waited, responsive and ready, and in France, a gentleman inventor was beginning the long, patient experiments that would finally produce the world's first permanent photograph. The window looked out over the courtyard and the sloping rooftops beyond, an ordinary view from an upper floor of the estate at Le Gras, near the village of Saint-Loup-de-Varin, in the Burgundy region of France. Joseph Nicephore had seen this vista countless times, watching the morning light gradually illuminate the pigeon house and the barn, the pear tree in the courtyard casting its familiar shadow. But on one day, probably in the summer of 1826, or perhaps early 1827, he positioned a strange device at this window, a camera obscura fitted with a pewter plate coated with an unusual substance, and began an exposure that would continue for 8 hours. 8 hours. The sun traveled across the sky during those long hours, illuminating both sides of the courtyard as the light shifted from east to west. Niepce was not present for most of this time. The camera required no attention, no adjustment. The process was entirely one of patient waiting, of allowing the light itself to perform its slow, invisible work on the prepared metal plate inside the wooden box. What Niepce had coated his plate with was bitumen of Judea, a naturally occurring asphalt that had been used since ancient times for various purposes, from waterproofing to medicine. But Niepce had discovered something remarkable about this sticky tar-like substance. When dissolved in lavender oil and spread thinly across a polished metal surface, bitumen of Judea possessed a peculiar property. Exposure to light would harden it, while the portions that remained in shadow stayed soluble and could be washed away. This was heliography, as Niepce called it, sun drawing. The word itself captured the essence of what was happening during those 8 silent hours at the window. The sun was creating the image, literally drawing with its rays upon the prepared surface. Every photon that entered the camera obscura and struck the bitumen-coated plate contributed to a chemical transformation occurring at a pace almost too slow to imagine. The process required extraordinary patience, a quality Niepce possessed in abundance. He had been experimenting for years, trying various substances and methods, seeking a way to permanently capture the images that the camera obscura could project. He had tried different chemicals, different surfaces, different approaches. His experiments cost money and time, resources that were not unlimited. His family's estate produced modest income, and his brother Claude had departed for England years earlier, pursuing other inventions, leaving Nicephore to continue the photographic experiments, largely alone. When Nicephore finally removed the pewter plate from the camera obscura and treated it with a mixture of lavender oil and white petroleum, the unhardened bitumen dissolved away. What remained was barely visible, a pattern of light and dark areas so subtle that it could only be seen clearly when held at certain angles to catch the light. The hardened bitumen, whitish in appearance, represented the bright areas of the scene. The bare pewter, darker in tone, showed where the shadows had been. The image that emerged showed the view from the window with remarkable fidelity, considering the primitive nature of the process. The pigeon house stood to the left, the barn to the right, the sloping roofs visible between them. Because of the 8-hour exposure and the sun's movement across the sky, both sides of the courtyard appeared illuminated, creating an image that defied normal lighting conditions. It was a picture of a moment that had never existed, yet it was entirely real, created not by human hand but by light itself. This plate, measuring roughly 8 by 6.5 inches, was not beautiful by any conventional standard. The image was grainy, indistinct, lacking detail. Compared to the sharp engravings and detailed paintings that people of the era were accustomed to seeing, it must have seemed crude, almost disappointing. But its significance had nothing to do with aesthetic quality. This was the first permanent photograph, the first time in human history that light had been captured and fixed, creating an image that would not fade when removed from the camera. Niepce understood the magnitude of what he had achieved, though he also recognized its limitations. The exposure time made portraits impossible. No human could remain motionless for 8 hours. The bitumen process produced images that were difficult to see and nearly impossible to reproduce. There was no way to make copies from this single plate. Nevertheless, he had crossed a threshold that generations of experimenters had approached but never passed. He had made the ephemeral permanent. In the years that followed, Niepce continued his experiments, always seeking to improve the process, to reduce the exposure time, to create clearer images. He entered into correspondence and eventually partnership with another Frenchman who was pursuing similar goals, Louis Daguerre, a successful painter and entrepreneur who operated a popular entertainment in Paris. Their collaboration would prove significant, though Niepce himself would not live to see photography achieve practical success. He died in 1833, after years of experimentation that had consumed much of his energy and resources. The pewter plate from Le Gras survived, though its journey through history was precarious. Eventually it made its way to England, then to a collection at the University of Texas at Austin, where it remains today, carefully preserved as the first photograph. When examined under the right lighting conditions, the ghostly image still appears, this view from a French window that was captured nearly 2 centuries ago, when sunlight first learned to draw its own portrait. What made this achievement revolutionary was not its technical perfection, but its proof of possibility. Niepce had demonstrated that the camera obscura need no longer be merely an aid for artists, a tool for tracing images by hand. It could be transformed into something else entirely, a device that could capture reality itself, preserving what the eye saw without requiring human intervention to draw or paint. The implications of this would unfold gradually, as others built upon his foundation, but the essential breakthrough had occurred in that 8-hour exposure, in the slow chemical dance of bitumen and sunlight that created the first permanent picture. The partnership between Joseph Nicéphore Niepce and Louis Daguerre began in an atmosphere of mutual fascination and careful diplomacy. Niepce had spent years perfecting his heliographic process, working in relative isolation at his family estate in Saint-Lô-de-Varennes. Daguerre, meanwhile, had established himself as a celebrated showman in Paris, creating elaborate theatrical spectacles called dioramas that captivated audiences with their clever use of light and painted scenes. When Daguerre learned of Niepce's experiments in capturing permanent images, he recognized immediately that such a technique could transform his artistic work. Their correspondence began in 1826, the same year that Niepce created his famous view from the window. Daguerre wrote with enthusiasm and persistence, expressing his own experiments with light-sensitive materials and his burning desire to solve the puzzle of permanent image-making. Niepce, protective of his discoveries after years of struggle, responded with caution. He had shared information too freely in the past and worried about losing credit for his innovations. Yet Daguerre's letters revealed genuine knowledge and complementary skills. Where Niepce excelled in chemistry and patience, Daguerre brought artistic vision and connections to Parisian society. By 1829, the two men formalized their partnership, agreeing to share their knowledge and work together toward perfecting the photographic process. Niepce would contribute his heliographic technique, while Daguerre would explore improvements and help promote their eventual discoveries. The collaboration proved beneficial but brief. In 1833, Niepce died suddenly, leaving Daguerre to continue the work alone. Though now in partnership with Niepce's son, Isidore, Daguerre devoted himself entirely to improving upon Niepce's foundation. The heliographic process, while successful in capturing an image, required those impossibly long exposures and produced results that lacked the clarity and detail Daguerre envisioned. He experimented tirelessly, testing different metals, various chemical treatments, and alternative methods of development. His breakthrough came gradually through careful observation and fortunate accident. The story often told suggests that Daguerre placed an exposed silver plate into a cabinet where he stored chemicals, intending to clean and reuse the metal. When he retrieved the plate days later, he discovered to his amazement that a clear image had appeared on its surface. Some fumes from the stored chemicals had developed the latent image without any additional processing. Investigation revealed the magical substance to be mercury vapor from a broken thermometer. Whether the discovery happened quite so accidentally remains uncertain, but the result proved revolutionary. Mercury vapor could develop a photographic image far more quickly than previous methods. The complete daguerreotype process that Daguerre perfected by 1837 represented an elegant chemical dance. He began with a copper plate coated with a thin layer of highly polished silver. This silver surface had to be buffed to an almost mirror-like finish, reflecting light with perfect smoothness. The plate was then exposed to iodine vapor in a closed box, creating a coating of light-sensitive silver iodide across the surface. This preparation had to occur in darkness or very dim light to prevent premature exposure. Once sensitized, the plate was placed in the camera while still protected from light. Only when positioned and ready would the photographer remove the cover, allowing light from the scene to strike the silver surface. The exposure times Daguerre achieved were dramatically shorter than Nietzsche's 8-hour marathon. Though still measured in minutes rather than seconds, the length depended on available light, with bright sunny days requiring perhaps 10 to 20 minutes, while dimmer conditions might demand an hour or more. After exposure, the plate appeared unchanged, bearing no visible image. Here lay one of Daguerre's crucial innovations. The plate was placed in another closed box containing heated mercury. The mercury vapor would gather on areas of the plate that had been struck by light, forming a silvery amalgam that created the visible image. The mercury-coated areas appeared bright and reflective, while the untreated silver remained dark. This development process revealed the captured scene, as if by magic, the image emerging from apparent nothingness. To make the image permanent, Daguerre washed the plate in a solution of common salt dissolved in water, and later found that sodium thiosulfate worked even better. This fixing bath dissolved away the remaining light-sensitive silver iodide, preventing any further darkening if the finished daguerreotype were exposed to light. After rinsing and drying, the plate was often sealed behind glass to protect its delicate surface from tarnishing and abrasion. The resulting daguerreotypes possessed an almost uncanny quality. The images appeared incredibly sharp and detailed, capturing textures and subtle gradations of tone that no previous process could match. The polished silver gave the pictures a luminous quality, as if they glowed with their own light. Viewing a daguerreotype required tilting the plate to find the right angle, as the reflective surface could show either a positive image or a mirror-like reflection, depending on how light struck it. This changing quality added to their mysterious appeal. Daguerre announced his invention to the French Academy of Sciences in January 1839, creating immediate sensation. Here at last was a practical method of capturing permanent images with remarkable fidelity. The French government recognized the significance of the discovery and negotiated to purchase the rights to the process. In August 1839, the details were revealed at a joint meeting of the Academy of Sciences and the Academy of Fine Arts in Paris. In an extraordinary gesture, the French government presented the daguerreotype as a gift to the world, free for anyone to use except in England, where Daguerre had already secured a patent. The public response exceeded all expectations. Within weeks, daguerreotype manuals were published and translated into multiple languages. Opticians and instrument makers rushed to produce cameras designed specifically for the daguerreotype process. Enterprising individuals opened studios in Paris, London, New York, and cities across Europe and America. People marveled at the precision with which these silver plates captured reality, preserving expressions and details that painters could only approximate. The age of photography had truly begun, and nothing would ever be quite the same. While Daguerre's silvered plates were dazzling the world with their mirror-like clarity and exquisite detail, another inventor across the English Channel had been quietly pursuing his own path toward capturing light. William Henry Fox Talbot was a gentleman scholar, a man of wide-ranging curiosities who moved easily between mathematics, botany, and the ancient languages. He lived at Lacock Abbey in Wiltshire, a medieval building his family had converted into a comfortable country home, and it was there that his photographic experiments would unfold in ways quite different from Daguerre's theatrical demonstrations in Paris. Talbot's journey into photography began not from scientific ambition, but from a moment of personal frustration. In October of 1833, while honeymooning beside Lake Como in Italy, he had attempted to sketch the scenic landscape using a camera lucida, a drawing aid that employed a prism to superimpose the scene onto paper. Despite this helpful device, Talbot found his artistic abilities woefully inadequate to capture the beauty before him. His drawings were, by his own admission, rather poor. As he struggled with pencil and paper, a thought emerged that would shape the next chapter of photographic history. Perhaps, he wondered, the images themselves might be made to draw themselves through some natural process, without requiring the hand of an artist at all. Upon returning to England, Talbot began experimenting with light-sensitive materials. He knew from reading scientific papers that silver salts darkened when exposed to light, and he set about finding a way to harness this property. His approach differed fundamentally from what Niepce and Daguerre were developing in France, though Talbot had no knowledge of their work at the time. Instead of metal plates, Talbot worked with ordinary writing paper, coating it with salt and then brushing it with a solution of silver nitrate. This created silver chloride within the paper fibers, a substance that would darken under the influence of sunlight. By the summer of 1835, Talbot had achieved his first small successes. He would place objects directly onto his prepared paper, a leaf, a piece of lace, a feather, and expose the arrangement to sunlight. Where the objects blocked the light, the paper remained pale. Where sunlight struck the paper directly, it darkened. The result was a silhouette, a delicate shadow picture that captured the form of whatever had rested on the paper. These contact prints required no camera at all, and Talbot found their ghostly beauty quite enchanting. But Talbot wanted more than shadow pictures. He wanted to capture views, perspectives, scenes of the world as seen through a lens. He obtained small wooden boxes fitted with lenses, essentially miniature camera obscuras, and placed his prepared paper inside them. The images were tiny, some no larger than a postage stamp, and the exposures required considerable time, sometimes an hour or more, but they worked. In August of 1835, from a window at Lacock Abbey, Talbot captured a view of the latticed window in the south gallery. The image showed the window's diamond-paned structure clearly, rendered in soft browns and creams. This little photograph, barely an inch across, still survives today, recognized as the oldest existing photographic negative made in a camera. Here was where Talbot's process diverged most significantly from Daguerre's approach. The daguerreotype created a positive image directly. What you saw on the plate was a one-of-a-kind picture showing light areas as light and dark areas as dark. But Talbot's paper images were reversed. Where the actual scene was bright, his paper turned dark. Where shadows fell in reality, the paper remained light. These reversed images were, in essence, negatives, though Talbot did not initially use that term. At first, this reversal seemed like a disadvantage, an odd quirk of his process, but Talbot recognized something that would prove revolutionary. If he took one of these reversed images and used it as the object in making another light-sensitive picture, essentially photographing the photograph, the tones would reverse again. Dark would become light, and light would become dark, restoring the natural appearance of the scene. Moreover, this could be done repeatedly. From a single negative, Talbot could produce multiple positive prints, each one a copy of the original scene. This reproducibility stood in stark contrast to Daguerre's process, where each daguerreotype was unique and unrepeatable. Talbot continued refining his process through the late 1830s. Though he did not publish his findings, photography remained his private pursuit, a gentleman's scientific hobby carried out in the rooms and grounds of his estate. He shared his results with a small circle of friends and correspondents, but he made no grand announcements. The images were faint, and required much improvement, and Talbot likely felt his process needed further development before public revelation. Then came January of 1839, when news reached England that Daguerre had invented a process for fixing images created by light. The French inventor was preparing to announce his discovery to the world. Talbot, alarmed that his own work might be forgotten or dismissed as mere imitation, rushed to establish his priority. Within weeks, he presented examples of his photographs to the Royal Institution in London and published a paper describing what he called photogenic drawing. His timing meant that two photographing processes were announced to the world almost simultaneously. Daguerre's in France and Talbot's in England, though they had been invented independently and worked by entirely different principles. In 1841, Talbot made a crucial improvement to his process. He discovered that paper bathed in a mixture of silver nitrate and gallic acid became far more sensitive to light. Even more importantly, he found that a brief exposure to light created an invisible latent image in the paper that could be chemically developed and made visible afterward. This meant exposure times could be dramatically reduced, from many minutes to just seconds in good light. Talbot called this improved process the calotype, from the Greek word kalos, meaning beautiful. Others referred to it as the Talbotype, naming it after its inventor. The calotype gave photography something new, the separation of taking the picture from making it visible. With daguerreotypes, the image appeared gradually during the exposure itself. With calotypes, the picture was captured invisibly and revealed later through development. This concept of the latent image would become fundamental to photography for the next century and a half. Talbot's paper negatives could never match the crystalline sharpness of daguerreotypes. The paper fibers themselves were visible in the prints, giving calotype images a softer, slightly textured appearance. But what the calotype offered was the ability to print multiple copies from a single negative, to share images widely, and to create books illustrated with actual photographs. In 1844, Talbot published The Pencil of Nature, the first commercially published book illustrated with photographs, containing calotype prints pasted onto its pages. Here was proof that photography could be more than portraits and curiosities. It could tell stories, document the world, and bring distant places into people's homes. As we rest here in this moment of photographic history, we can see how two parallel paths had emerged. Daguerre offered unmatched clarity and detail, each image a precious, unique object. Talbot offered reproducibility and the promise of photography as a means of mass communication. Both would shape how photography developed, and both contained seeds of the medium's future possibilities, waiting in the gentle darkness to germinate and grow. The story of photography might have remained a quiet tale of competing inventors and closely guarded secrets, known only to a small circle of scientists and artists. But January 1839 brought something extraordinary, the moment when photography stopped being private ambition and became public wonder. The announcement arrived in layers, like a photograph slowly emerging in a developing bath. On January 7th, the scientist and politician François Arago stood before the French Academy of Sciences in Paris. The august chamber, accustomed to presentations on magnetism, geology, and celestial mechanics, heard something different that winter day. Arago described an invention that could capture reality itself, preserving scenes with accuracy no human hand could match. He spoke of Louis Daguerre and the miraculous plates that held images fixed by light and chemistry. Arago chose his words carefully, revealing enough to astound but withholding the technical details. He wanted to protect the process until France could secure it properly. The Academy members leaned forward in their seats. Artists attending the session felt their pulses quicken. Here was the realization of that old dream, permanent images created not by brushes, but by nature's own hand. News of the announcement rippled outward through Paris, then across France, then beyond. Newspapers carried accounts of this marvelous discovery. The description alone seemed fantastic. Polished silver plates, mercury vapors, images of buildings and boulevards rendered in exquisite detail. People who read these reports in London, Vienna, and New York struggled to imagine such things. Could light truly draw its own portrait? Meanwhile, in England, William Henry Fox Talbot read the French reports with growing alarm. His own photographic process, developed independently over several years, remained largely private. He had shown his paper negatives to friends and presented them to a few scientific gatherings, but he had not made them widely known. Now Daguerre's announcement threatened to eclipse his work entirely. Talbot hastened to assert his own priority, presenting papers to the Royal Society and displaying his photogenic drawings. The stage was set for a gentle rivalry, a race that had already been run without either competitor knowing the other was running too. The French government, guided by Arago's persuasive advocacy, took an unusual step. Rather than allowing Daguerre to profit through patent restrictions, France purchased the rights to the daguerreotype process. In August 1839, the details were released freely to the world, a gift from France to humanity. Only England retained patent restrictions, as Daguerre's agent had secured British rights just days before the French announcement. On August 19th, Arago presented the full technical description to a joint meeting of the Academy of Sciences and the Academy of Fine Arts. The session took place in the grand chambers of the Institut de France, and the crowd overflowed into adjoining rooms and corridors. Everyone wanted to hear the secret. Arago explained each step: the polishing of the silver plate, the sensitization with iodine vapor, the exposure in the camera, the development with heated mercury, the fixing with common salt or sodium thiosulfate. He spoke for hours, methodically revealing what had been mysterious for months. The reaction came swiftly. Within days, people across Paris began attempting daguerreotypes. Opticians sold out of cameras and the chemicals needed for the process. Similar scenes unfolded in other cities as the news spread. In America, Samuel Morse, already famous for his telegraph, learned the daguerreotype process during a visit to Paris and brought it back to New York. He taught others, who taught still others, and soon photographic studios began opening in American cities. The daguerreotype captured the public imagination in ways that earlier inventions had not. Perhaps it was the mirror-like quality of the images, the way they seemed to hold fragments of actual light. Perhaps it was the democratic promise: anyone could potentially operate a camera and capture what they saw. Or perhaps it was simply the profound strangeness of it, the uncanny experience of seeing the world reflected back with mechanical precision. Studios appeared in London and Edinburgh, in Boston and Philadelphia, in Brussels and Berlin. Photographers hung signs, advertising their services. The daguerreotype portrait became fashionable, then common, then nearly expected. People who had never afforded painted portraits could now obtain photographic likenesses for a fraction of the cost. The process required subjects to sit very still for exposures that might last from several seconds to a minute or more, depending on the light. Studio photographers developed techniques to help headrests that steadied the subject, bright skylights that shortened exposure times, encouraging words to help people maintain their expressions through the long stillness. The first daguerreotypes revealed a world that painting had interpreted but never quite captured with such literalness. Buildings stood in sharp relief, their architectural details preserved down to individual bricks and window panes. Trees showed individual leaves, cobblestones created patterns of light and shadow. The technology had limitations, certainly. Moving subjects appeared as blurs or ghosts. The images were laterally reversed, like mirror reflections. Each daguerreotype was unique, unable to be reproduced except by photographing it again. Yet these constraints hardly diminished the enthusiasm. Travelers carried cameras to distant places. Within months of the public announcement, daguerreotypes documented the ruins of Athens, the pyramids of Egypt, the streets of Constantinople. The world began creating a visual record of itself in unprecedented detail. Future generations would be able to see not artistic interpretations, but something closer to witness testimony, evidence of how things actually appeared. The daguerreotype's popularity persisted for years, even as other photographic processes competed for attention. Talbot's calotypes offered reproducibility, but less sharpness. The daguerreotype provided clarity, but no negatives. Photographers and clients chose based on their priorities. Some preferred the jewel-like quality of daguerreotypes. while others valued the ability to make multiple prints from Talbot's paper negatives. As 1839 drew to a close, photography was no longer the private pursuit of inventors. It had become a public phenomenon, a new way of seeing that was beginning to reshape how people documented their lives and understood their world. The chemical magic that Niepce, Daguerre, and Talbot had worked so hard to achieve now belonged to anyone willing to learn the processes and practice the craft. Photography had stepped into the light, and the world would never look quite the same again. The public announcement of photography in 1839 had opened floodgates of possibility, but those early processes carried significant limitations. Daguerreotypes produced hauntingly beautiful images on silver plates, yet each one remained unique, impossible to reproduce. Talbot's Collodion allowed multiple prints from paper negatives, but their texture softened fine details. By the late 1840s, photographers and inventors across Europe sensed that something better might be possible, some method that could combine the sharpness of one process with the reproducibility of the other. Frederick Scott Archer was an unlikely figure to revolutionize photography. Working as a sculptor in London, he had taken up the camera to photograph his subjects as preparation for his three-dimensional work. This practical need led him into the darkroom, where he grew frustrated with both available methods. The daguerreotype couldn't give him multiple reference prints. The Collodion's paper fibers obscured the fine details he needed to see. So Archer began experimenting, searching for an alternative approach in the quiet hours between sculpting commissions. His breakthrough came from an unexpected substance. Collodion was a syrupy solution of nitrated cotton dissolved in ether and alcohol. Originally developed as a medical dressing for wounds, when painted onto skin, it dried into a transparent, flexible film that protected injuries. Archer wondered whether this sticky liquid might also serve as a medium to hold light-sensitive chemicals onto glass. Throughout 1848 and 1849, he worked methodically, coating glass plates with collodion mixed with potassium iodide, then sensitizing them in a bath of silver nitrate just before exposure. The results exceeded his hopes. Images captured on collodion-coated glass possessed extraordinary clarity, rivaling daguerreotypes in sharpness, while allowing unlimited paper prints like Collodions. The glass negative showed perfect detail, without the paper fibers that had softened Talbot's images. When Archer published his method in 1851, he made a decision that would shape photography's future. He did not patent his invention. Instead, he freely shared every detail of his process, believing that photography should remain accessible to all who wished to practice it. The wet collodion process, as it became known, spread with remarkable speed. Within just a few years, it had largely replaced both daguerreotypes and Collodions as the preferred method for serious photographers. Studios across Europe and America converted to the new technique, and the reasons were compelling. A collodion negative on glass could produce dozens or even hundreds of paper prints, each one sharp and detailed. The materials cost less than daguerreotype plates. Exposure times were shorter, sometimes requiring only a few seconds in good light, rather than the long minutes of earlier processes. But this chemical magic came with extraordinary demands. The entire process had to be completed while the collodion remained wet. The photographer would begin by cleaning a glass plate until it was immaculately free of dust or fingerprints. Then came the coating, a delicate operation requiring steady hands and practiced judgment. The photographer poured a small pool of syrupy collodion onto one corner of the glass, then tilted and rotated the plate, flowing the liquid across the entire surface in an even layer. Too much collodion would run off the edges, too little would leave gaps. The coating needed to be uniform, without streaks or bubbles. Once coated, the plate was immediately dipped into a bath of silver nitrate solution, where it became sensitive to light. This sensitization took only a few minutes, but timing mattered. The plate had to be exposed in the camera while still damp. For once the collodion dried, its light-gathering ability vanished. After exposure, the photographer rushed to develop the invisible latent image in a solution of pyrogallic acid or ferrous sulfate, watching as the picture gradually appeared on the glass. Finally came fixing with sodium thiosulfate to remove unexposed silver salts. washing to remove chemical residues, and varnishing to protect the finished negative. From start to finish, perhaps 20 or 30 minutes might elapse. This urgent timeline transformed photography into something like a performance, a race against drying chemistry. Photographers working outdoors needed portable darkrooms where they could coat, sensitize, and develop their plates on location. Some used converted wagons or carriages. Others carried tent-like structures that could be erected wherever photographs were needed. The photographer became part chemist, part craftsperson, part laborer, hauling equipment and working with volatile, often toxic chemicals in cramped, dim spaces. The wet collodion process demanded technical mastery. The collodion itself required careful preparation, mixing gun cotton with ether and alcohol in precise proportions. Too thick, and it wouldn't flow evenly. Too thin, and it wouldn't hold the silver salts properly. The silver nitrate bath needed exactly the right concentration and freshness. Temperature affected every stage of the process. Cold weather slowed chemical reactions. Heat could cause the collodion to dry too quickly. Humidity influenced coating and drying. Photographers learned to read their materials and adjust their methods to conditions, developing an intuitive understanding born of repetition and failure. Despite these challenges, or perhaps because of them, the wet collodion process enabled photography to flourish as never before. The combination of sharp detail and reproducibility opened new possibilities. Photographers could now create multiple prints from their best negatives, building portfolios and selling copies of popular images. The shorter exposure times made portraiture more comfortable for subjects who no longer needed to hold perfectly still for minutes on end. Glass negatives stored well, creating permanent archives that paper negatives couldn't match. The chemistry of wet collodion also enabled new types of photographs. By using the glass negative itself as the final image, placing it against a dark background, photographers created ambrotypes, images that appeared positive rather than negative. These became popular as less expensive alternatives to daguerreotypes, offering similar uniqueness in handsome cases. Another variation, the tintype, used collodion coated on thin sheets of japanned iron instead of glass, creating durable, inexpensive images that became favorites at fairs and seaside resorts. Frederick Scott Archer's generous decision not to patent his invention meant that photographers could adopt the wet collodion process without paying licensing fees or navigating legal restrictions. This openness accelerated photography's spread and democratized access to the medium's best available technology. Tragically, Archer himself gained little material benefit from his revolutionary contribution. He died in 1857 at just 44 years old, leaving his family in poverty despite having transformed an entire art and science. The wet collodion process would dominate photography for more than 2 decades, from the early 1850s until the late 1870s. During those years, photographers lugged their portable darkrooms across continents, climbed mountains with their chemistry, and documented wars, explorations, and the expanding modern world. They worked with dedication and skill, mastering a demanding craft that required both technical precision and artistic vision. As they did, photography continued evolving, reaching toward the next innovation that would make the camera more portable still, more practical, more ready to capture the endless variety of light and shadow that makes up our visible world. The wet collodion process had given photographers remarkable sharpness and detail, but now something even more remarkable was about to happen. Photography was about to step out from behind the velvet curtains of exclusive studios and walk into the lives of ordinary people. For the first time in history, anyone with a modest income could own a photograph of themselves, of their children, of their loved ones. The magic of captured light was becoming democratic. In Paris, a photographer named André Adolphe Eugène Disdéry was contemplating a simple problem. Portraits were expensive. The large plates required for a single dignified portrait meant that only the wealthy could afford to have their likenesses preserved. Disdéry wondered what would happen if he could take multiple small portraits on a single plate. In 1854, he patented a camera with multiple lenses that could capture 8 small portraits on one glass negative. Each image measured just 2.5 inches by 4 inches, roughly the size of a calling card that gentlemen and ladies used when paying social visits. These tiny photographs became known as carte de visite, or visiting card photographs. The concept was brilliantly simple. A person would sit for a photographer, and from that single session, they would receive multiple copies of their portrait mounted on cardstock. They could keep some for themselves and give others away to friends, family, and acquaintances. The cost per image dropped dramatically because photographers could produce so many copies from a single sitting. The timing was perfect. By the late 1850s, the middle classes in Europe and America were growing. People who could never have afforded a painted miniature or a large daguerreotype suddenly found portraiture within reach. A few coins could buy what had once cost a small fortune. Photography studios began appearing on main streets in towns and cities across the civilized world, their windows displaying sample portraits to entice passers-by. The carte de visite craze truly exploded after a single moment in 1859. Napoleon III, Emperor of France, stopped his troops while marching through Paris to have his carte de visite portrait taken by Daguerre. When word spread that the emperor himself had posed for these small photographs, everyone wanted them. Collecting carte de visite of famous people became a phenomenon that swept across continents. People assembled albums with special slots designed to hold these standardized images, filling page after page with faces. Photographers maintained stock images of celebrities, royalty, politicians, actors, and other notable figures. You could walk into a studio and purchase a carte de visite of Queen Victoria, President Abraham Lincoln, or the famous actress Sarah Bernhardt. People collected these images like we might collect trading cards today, building visual encyclopedias of the notable people of their age. Some collectors assembled hundreds or even thousands of these small portraits. But the real revolution was personal. For the first time, ordinary families could afford to exchange photographs with distant relatives. A young man leaving home to seek his fortune in a distant city could carry small portraits of his parents and siblings. A grandmother could have images of all her grandchildren arranged in an album on her parlor table. Sweethearts separated by distance could gaze upon each other's faces. The photographic studio became a destination, an event. Families would dress in their finest clothes and travel to town for a sitting. The experience held a mixture of excitement and solemnity. Inside the studio, photographers arranged their subjects carefully, posing them with props and painted backdrops that suggested wealth and status beyond what the subjects might actually possess. A simple farmhand might be photographed standing beside a classical column with a painted garden behind him. A factory worker could appear as dignified as a merchant prince. The long exposure times required by collodion plates meant that subjects had to remain perfectly still, sometimes held in place by hidden metal stands that braced their heads and backs. This technical necessity contributed to the serious, unsmiling expressions we see in most photographs from this era. But people accepted this constraint willingly. They were participating in something that would have seemed like magic to their grandparents, the permanent preservation of their appearance, their moment in time. Photographers developed conventions and styles. Children might be photographed with toys or books. Ladies often held flowers or were posed near furniture. Gentlemen stood with serious bearing, sometimes with a hand tucked into their coat in imitation of painted portraits. These poses were repeated in studios across the world, creating a visual language that people understood and expected. The albums that held these cartes de visite became treasured family possessions, passed from generation to generation. Leather-bound volumes with gilt edges sat in parlors, available for guests to peruse. Looking through a family's photograph album became a social ritual, a way of sharing one's connections and history. The photographs themselves were objects of beauty, often tinted with delicate colors by hand, mounted on elegant cardstock with the photographer's name embossed in ornate topography. Some photographers experimented with variations. The cabinet card, introduced in the 1860s, offered a larger format, roughly 4 inches by 6 inches. These provided more detail and presence while remaining affordable. Families might have cabinet cards made for special occasions or to mark important milestones. The larger size commanded more respect, often displayed in special frames rather than tucked into albums. As photography became accessible, It also became essential to how people thought about themselves and their families. Before photography, most people went through life never seeing an accurate image of their own face except as a reversed reflection in mirrors or water. Now they could see themselves as others saw them. They could watch their children grow through a series of portraits. They could preserve the memory of loved ones who had passed away, creating a new relationship with mortality and memory. Studios became fixtures in communities, as familiar as the general store or the church. Photographers were artisans and business people, investing in expensive equipment and chemicals, maintaining their skills, competing for customers. Some became quite successful, opening multiple locations or specializing in particular types of portraits. Others struggled, especially as competition increased and prices fell. The democratization of portraiture through carte de visite and cabinet cards represented something profound. It suggested that every life had value worth preserving, that every face deserved to be remembered. In earlier centuries, only the powerful and wealthy left visual records of their existence. Now a seamstress, a clerk, a teacher, a miner could all leave behind their images for future generations to discover and wonder about. Photography was becoming not just a technology, but a fundamental part of human culture, a new way of saying we were here, we existed, we mattered. As photography studios were transforming how ordinary people saw themselves and preserved their family memories, another kind of photograph was about to change everything. Photography was preparing to leave the comfortable confines of the portrait studio and venture into places no camera had gone before. It was about to witness war. In the spring of 1855, a photographer named Roger Fenton received an unusual commission. The British government wanted someone to travel to the Crimean Peninsula, where British and French forces were fighting Russian troops in a conflict that had already dragged on for more than a year. Reports from the battlefield had been troubling. Soldiers were dying not just from combat, but from disease and exposure in the harsh conditions. The public was growing concerned, and the government hoped that carefully selected photographs might help shape a more positive narrative about the war effort. Fenton was an accomplished photographer who had documented the British royal family and various architectural subjects, but nothing had prepared him for what he would need to do in Crimea. He couldn't simply pack a camera and a few glass plates. He needed an entire darkroom on wheels. Working with the wet collodion process meant that every photograph had to be coated, exposed, and developed while the chemicals were still moist. In the controlled environment of a studio, this was challenging enough. On a battlefield, it would be extraordinary. The photographer equipped a horse-drawn wagon as a mobile darkroom, painting it white to reflect the intense sun and stocking it with bottles of chemicals, tanks of water, and cases of glass plates. This traveling laboratory became known to the soldiers as the photographic van, and it drew curious stares wherever it went. Inside this enclosed space, working by amber-colored light that wouldn't expose his plates prematurely, Fenton prepared his materials before each photograph and rushed back to develop them after each exposure. The technical obstacles were relentless. The summer heat turned the van into an oven, causing chemicals to evaporate and collodion to dry too quickly on the glass. Dust blown by the wind settled on sticky plates, creating spots and streaks. The rough roads jolted equipment and broke precious glass negatives, and always there was the smell of the chemicals mixing with the odors of war, creating an atmosphere that was both strange and memorable. Fenton photographed for several months, creating hundreds of images that showed various aspects of the conflict. He captured officers in their uniforms, soldiers at their camps, and the landscape scarred by war. His most famous photograph showed a desolate road scattered with cannonballs, a scene he called the Valley of the Shadow of Death, referencing the biblical psalm. The image was haunting in its stillness, the round shot lying across the barren ground like deadly seeds that had been sown across the earth. What Fenton couldn't photograph was equally significant. The long exposure times required by his process meant that movement appeared as blur. Battle itself was impossible to capture. The wet collodion process also meant working from a position of relative safety, as he needed access to his van. The wounded, the dead, and the true horror of combat remained outside the frame of his photographs. Yet even with these limitations, His images brought the distant war into British drawing rooms with unprecedented immediacy. A few years later, another conflict would push war photography even further. When the American Civil War erupted in 1861, a photographer named Matthew Brady saw an opportunity to create a comprehensive visual record. Brady had operated successful portrait studios in New York and Washington, photographing presidents and celebrities. Now he wanted to photograph history itself as it unfolded. Brady organized teams of photographers and equipped them with traveling darkroom wagons, similar to Fenton's design. These wagons followed the armies, and the photographers who worked in them faced all the same chemical challenges that Fenton had encountered, plus the added dangers of a conflict fought across a vast territory. The photographers included Timothy O'Sullivan, Alexander Gardner, and others whose names are now recognized alongside Brady's, though for many years Brady claimed credit for much of their work. These Civil War photographers went places and showed things that Fenton had not. After the Battle of Antietam in September 1862, Gardner and another photographer named James Gibson arrived to document the aftermath. Their photographs showed the terrible cost of the fighting, including images of the fallen still lying where they had dropped. When these photographs were displayed at Brady's New York gallery, visitors were stunned. Many had never seen anything like these images, which brought the reality of the battlefield to people who had previously known war only through sanitized paintings and heroic descriptions. The technical process remained arduous throughout the conflict. Photographers had to anticipate where significant events might occur and position themselves accordingly. They coated glass plates with collodion in their wagons, loaded the wet plates into their cameras, made exposures that lasted several seconds, then rushed back to develop the negatives before the collodion dried. All of this happened amid the noise and confusion of military operations, in all kinds of weather, with equipment that was always breaking down. The cameras themselves were large, mounted on sturdy tripods, and impossible to move quickly. Each glass plate negative captured a single image, and photographers typically made duplicate negatives of important scenes when possible. The resulting photographs froze moments in a way that had never been possible before, creating a visual archive of the conflict that included portraits of soldiers, images of camps and fortifications, landscapes transformed by war, and the human cost of the fighting. These war photographs did something profound. They made distant events feel immediate and real to people who would never visit a battlefield. A mother in Philadelphia could see something of the world her son inhabited in a military camp in Virginia. A politician in Washington could view the destruction of southern cities. The photographs didn't capture everything. The smoke and sound and chaos of combat remained beyond the reach of the medium, but they captured enough to change how people understood what war meant. The traveling darkrooms that made this possible were marvels of improvisation and determination. Inside these wagons, photographers worked with toxic chemicals in confined spaces, often in extreme heat or cold, always racing against the collodion's drying time. The dedication required to produce each image was extraordinary, and many negatives were lost to broken glass, chemical failures, or the simple exhaustion of the photographers who created them. As the war continued, thousands of photographs accumulated, creating a visual record of unprecedented scope. Photography had proven it could go anywhere human determination could take it, even into the presence of war itself, bearing witness with patient chemical precision to moments that would otherwise have existed only in memory and imagination. As photographers were documenting the aftermath of battles and the faces of soldiers far from home, another question about movement and time was puzzling minds in a completely different setting. In the drawing rooms and racetracks of the 1870s, a debate raged that seemed simple on the surface, but proved impossible to resolve with the naked eye. When a horse gallops at full speed, do all four hooves ever leave the ground at the same time? The human eye, marvelous as it is, cannot separate the individual moments within a galloping horse's stride. The legs move too quickly, blurring into a continuous motion that artists had been guessing at for centuries. Painters typically depicted racing horses with their front legs extended forward and their back legs stretched behind, a pose that seemed dynamic but was, as it turned out, completely wrong. The question became more than artistic curiosity. It became a challenge that would require photography to evolve beyond the still-posed images that had dominated its first 4 decades. In California, a railroad magnate named Leland Stanford had both the resources and the motivation to settle this debate. Stanford, who had made his fortune in the Transcontinental Railroad and served as governor, was also a passionate horseman who owned a breeding farm in Palo Alto. Whether he had made a substantial wager on the question, as some stories suggest, or was simply driven by competitive curiosity, Stanford wanted definitive proof. In 1872, he hired a photographer to attempt what had never been accomplished, capturing clear images of horses in rapid motion. The photographer he chose was as colorful and complicated a character as the American West could produce. Edward Muybridge, born Edward James Muggeridge in England in 1830, had reinvented himself in California after a stagecoach accident left him with a head injury, and some said a changed personality. He had become an accomplished landscape photographer, known for his large format images of Yosemite and the Pacific coast. But photographing a galloping horse would require something entirely different from his carefully composed scenic work. The technical challenges were immense. The wet collodion process that photographers still used in the early 1870s required relatively long exposures, even in bright sunlight. A galloping horse moved far too quickly for the chemical reactions on a glass plate to freeze its motion. The first attempts Muybridge made in 1872 produced only silhouettes, murky shapes that suggested a horse, but revealed little about the position of its legs. The experiment seemed to hit an impasse, and Muybridge turned his attention to other projects, including a photographic survey of the Modoc War. Personal tragedy and scandal interrupted Muybridge's work when in 1874 he discovered his wife's affair and shot and killed her lover. His trial for murder captivated California, and though he was acquitted on grounds of justifiable homicide, the episode delayed his return to Stanford's horse problem for several years. When he resumed the work in 1877, photographic technology had improved slightly, and Muybridge brought new determination to the challenge. At Stanford's Palo Alto stock farm, Muybridge designed an outdoor studio specifically for his motion experiments. He prepared a track with a white background to provide contrast, and he began using faster chemical preparations that could capture an image in a fraction of a second. In 1877, he produced a photograph that clearly showed a trotting horse with all 4 feet off the ground, though the image quality left critics questioning its authenticity. Some suspected Muybridge had retouched or even painted parts of the photograph. Determined to produce indisputable evidence, Muybridge expanded his system dramatically in 1878. He lined up not 1 but 12 cameras along the track, each one aimed at a specific point in the horse's stride. He rigged each camera with a shutter that could open and close in perhaps 1/1000th of a second. As the horse galloped down the track, it triggered each camera in sequence by breaking threads stretched across its path, which were connected to the shutters. In later refinements, he used an electromagnetic system for more reliable triggering. The resulting series of photographs was revolutionary. The 12 images, showing consecutive moments in a single stride, revealed the truth about equine locomotion with absolute clarity. Not only did all 4 hooves leave the ground during a gallop, but they did so when the legs were tucked beneath the horse's body, not in the extended flying pose that artists had imagined. The photographs looked strange to eyes accustomed to traditional paintings. The actual positions of a galloping horse seemed almost awkward when frozen in time, yet they were undeniably real. Muybridge published these sequential images, and they created a sensation. Scientists interested in animal locomotion suddenly had a tool for analyzing movement that had been invisible before. Artists found themselves having to unlearn centuries of convention. The paintings they had created weren't wrong because artists lacked skill or observation, but because human vision simply couldn't separate the individual moments. Photography had revealed a hidden world that existed between the blinks of an eye. Encouraged by his success, Muybridge expanded his motion studies. By 1879, he had increased the number of cameras and refined his triggering mechanisms. He photographed horses performing different gaits, from walking to jumping. Then he turned his cameras toward other animals, and eventually toward human subjects, capturing athletes running, jumping, and performing acrobatic movements. unphotographed people walking up and down stairs, lifting objects and carrying out everyday tasks, all broken down into sequential moments. Stanford commissioned a book to showcase these findings, The Horse in Motion, published in 1882, though tensions between the railroad baron and the photographer led to a falling out over credit for the achievement. Muybridge, ever the self-promoter and showman, took his work on lecture tours. He developed a device called the zoopraxiscope, which projected his sequential images in rapid succession, creating the illusion of motion. When audiences saw these photographs cycling through the projector, the frozen moments came back to life. The horse galloped once more, and people were witnessing something unprecedented, movement reconstructed from still images. The implications extended far beyond settling wagers about horses. Muybridge had demonstrated that photography could do more than preserve a single moment. It could analyze time itself, breaking continuous motion into discrete slices that revealed truths hidden within the flow of action. His work influenced scientists studying physiology and biomechanics, artists reimagining how to depict motion, and inventors dreaming of moving pictures. In France, Etienne Jules Marey was conducting similar experiments with chronophotography, recording multiple phases of motion on single plates, approaching the same questions through different methods. What Muybridge had accomplished represented photography maturing into a tool for discovery, not just documentation. The medium that had begun by trying to replicate what painters did was now showing people things they had never seen before, could never have seen without the camera's ability to slice time into fragments. As photographers prepared their glass plates with the wet collodion process, working quickly before the chemicals dried, they were learning that photography's future would include not just capturing moments, but revealing the invisible architecture of time and motion itself. The photographers who captured motion in the 1870s and 1880s faced an exhausting challenge. Every glass plate they used had to be coated with wet collodion immediately before exposure, then developed within minutes before the chemicals dried. Imagine setting up 12 cameras in a row to photograph a galloping horse, then preparing 12 glass plates one by one, each requiring careful timing and immediate processing. The work was meticulous, demanding, and bound to the darkroom by invisible chains of chemistry and time. But even as Muybridge arranged his cameras along the racetrack, other experimenters across Europe were developing something that would transform this demanding process. They were creating photographic plates that could be prepared weeks or even months in advance, stored in boxes, carried anywhere, and developed at leisure long after the photograph was taken. This innovation, modest as it might sound, would change photography as profoundly as the invention of the photograph itself. The key lay in replacing collodion with gelatin. This might seem like a small substitution, but gelatin possessed qualities that made it remarkably superior for holding light-sensitive chemicals. Derived from animal collagen through a gentle heating process, gelatin had been used for centuries in cooking and medicine. It could absorb enormous amounts of liquid, swell to many times its original size, then dry into a stable transparent coating that remained sensitive to light for extended periods. The breakthrough came through the work of Richard Leach Maddox, an English physician and amateur photographer who suffered from the ether fumes that rose from collodion solutions. Working in his small laboratory in the early 1870s, Maddox experimented with suspending silver bromide in gelatin instead of collodion. His first results, published in 1871, were promising but imperfect. The gelatin emulsion was less sensitive than collodion, requiring longer exposures, but it offered the tantalizing advantage of remaining sensitive after drying. Other experimenters immediately recognized the potential. Charles Bennett, working in England, discovered that heating the gelatin emulsion for several days dramatically increased its sensitivity to light. This ripening process, as it came to be called, created silver bromide crystals of just the right size and structure to capture light efficiently. By 1878, Bennett had created gelatin plates more sensitive than any wet collodion plate, capable of very brief exposures that could freeze motion more effectively than ever before. The transformation spread quickly through the photographic community. John Burgess in England and George Eastman in America began manufacturing gelatin dry plates commercially. These plates arrived in sealed boxes, protected from light, ready to use whenever the photographer wished. After exposure, they could be stored for days or weeks before development, freeing photographers from the tyranny of the portable darkroom and the urgent chemistry of wet processing. Consider what this meant for the photographer in practical terms. No longer did you need to carry bottles of chemicals, glass containers, and a light, tight tent or wagon wherever you went. No longer did you need to judge the perfect moment when collodion reached the right consistency, or develop frantically before the coating dried. Instead, you could pack a box of dry plates, load them into your camera one by one, expose them throughout the day, and return home to develop them all in one session in your permanent darkroom. The dry plate made photography portable in a way it had never been before. Photographers could climb mountains without chemical burdens, travel to remote locations without darkroom equipment, and work spontaneously without elaborate preparation. The medium became more responsive to the world, more capable of capturing unexpected moments and distant places. Professional photographers appreciated the consistency of manufactured dry plates. Every plate in a box had the same sensitivity, prepared under controlled conditions in a factory, rather than mixed by hand in a tent or temporary darkroom. This reliability made exposure calculation more predictable. Photographers could trust that what worked for one plate would work for the next. Building experience and confidence in their technique, amateur photographers discovered they could practice photography without mastering complex chemistry. The wet collodion process had required dedication and training, a willingness to work with potentially dangerous chemicals and accept frequent failures during the learning process. Dry plates simplified this considerably. While darkroom work still required care and skill, the most difficult and time-sensitive steps were eliminated. Photography became more accessible to people who wanted to take pictures without becoming chemistry experts. The gelatin emulsion also proved remarkably versatile for manufacturing. It could be coated on glass with great uniformity, creating plates of consistent quality. The dried coating was durable, able to withstand careful handling and storage. Photographers could buy plates in standard sizes, confident they would fit their cameras and deliver reliable results. By the early 1880s, dry plates dominated photography. Wet collodion, which had seemed like such an advance just 30 years earlier, became obsolete except among a few traditionalists who preferred its particular aesthetic qualities. The change happened with remarkable speed, driven by the obvious practical advantages of the new technology. The dry plate era also coincided with improvements in other aspects of photographic technology. Lenses became sharper and faster, able to gather more light and create clearer images. Camera designs evolved to become more portable and easier to use. Shutter mechanisms became more reliable, offering a range of exposure times rather than simply removing and replacing a lens cap. All these innovations worked together, each amplifying the benefits of the others. Yet the fundamental nature of photography remained unchanged. Light still exposed silver salts. Chemical development still revealed latent images. Fixing solutions still made those images permanent. The dry plate had not replaced the basic chemistry of photography, but simply made it more practical and predictable. The magic of captured light continued, now freed from the constraints that had limited where and how photographers could work. This freedom would soon enable the next great transformation in photography, one that would bring cameras into the hands of millions of ordinary people who simply wanted to remember their lives and share what they saw. The dry plate was the essential foundation for that democratization, the technology that made everything else possible. With dry plates liberating photographers from the immediate demands of wet chemistry, photography had become more practical than ever before. Yet it remained a pursuit for those with patience, skill, and considerable dedication. The cameras were heavy wooden boxes mounted on sturdy tripods. The glass plates, though no longer requiring on-site coating, were fragile and cumbersome. Every photograph still required careful exposure calculation, deliberate composition, and darkroom knowledge. Photography in the early 1880s belonged to professionals and serious amateurs who had invested time in learning the craft and money in acquiring the necessary equipment. In Rochester, New York, a young bank clerk named George Eastman, found himself drawn to this complicated art. He had purchased photographic equipment in 1877, planning to document a vacation to Santo Domingo. That trip never happened, but Eastman discovered something more captivating than travel: the challenge of improving photography itself. Working in his mother's kitchen at night after his banking duties, he began experimenting with emulsion formulas, seeking ways to make the photographic process simpler and more reliable. Eastman recognized that glass plates, despite their improvements, remained photography's fundamental limitation. They were heavy, breakable, and expensive to manufacture and transport. What if, he wondered, the light-sensitive emulsion could be coated onto something flexible instead? Paper had been tried before, but the texture of paper fibers interfered with image sharpness. Eastman began exploring whether a thin, transparent, flexible material could serve as a support for photographic emulsion. By 1884, after years of experimentation, Eastman had developed a workable system. He created a paper coated with a layer of soluble gelatin, topped with the light-sensitive emulsion. After exposure and development, the paper backing could be stripped away, leaving a thin, flexible negative. It was not perfect, but it worked. More importantly, this flexible film could be wound on rollers, allowing multiple exposures without changing plates. A photographer could now take picture after picture without the cumbersome ritual of inserting and removing individual glass plates. Eastman established the Eastman Dry Plate Company, which soon became the Eastman Company, and began manufacturing this roll film. He understood that his invention needed a camera designed specifically to use it. The large view cameras of the day, built to accommodate glass plates, were entirely unsuitable for this new flexible medium. What photography needed was a small, simple camera that anyone could operate without technical knowledge. In 1888, Eastman introduced exactly that, a compact box camera he called the Kodak. The name meant nothing, carried no meaning in any language. Eastman simply wanted a word that was short, distinctive, easy to pronounce in any country, and difficult to misspell. The Kodak camera was a revelation in simplicity. It measured just 6.5 inches long and 3.25 inches wide. It was preloaded with enough film for 100 circular photographs. The user looked through a small viewfinder, pointed the camera, and pressed a button. That was all. No focusing, no exposure calculation, no technical decisions whatsoever. The genius of Eastman's system extended beyond the camera itself. When all 100 exposures had been made, the photographer sent the entire camera back to the Eastman Company in Rochester. There, technicians removed the film, developed the negatives, made prints, reloaded the camera with fresh film, and returned everything to the customer. The advertising slogan captured this revolutionary simplicity perfectly. You press the button, we do the rest. For $25, anyone could own a Kodak camera. For $10 more, they could have their film developed and their camera reloaded. These were not insignificant sums in 1888, but they represented a fraction of what traditional photography equipment cost. More importantly, no darkroom knowledge, no chemical expertise, and no artistic training were required. Photography had suddenly become accessible to everyone with modest means and the curiosity to try. The transformation happened with remarkable speed. Within a few years, thousands of amateur photographers were documenting their lives, their families, their travels, and their everyday experiences. These were not formal studio portraits or carefully composed landscapes. They were spontaneous records of birthday parties, beach outings, garden gatherings, and children at play. Photography was escaping the studio and the tripod, venturing into ordinary life. Eastman continued refining his system. In 1889, he replaced the paper-based stripping film with true transparent film made from nitrocellulose, creating an even better support for photographic emulsions. This clear, flexible film produced sharper negatives and was easier to manufacture consistently. It would remain the foundation of photography for the next century. The Kodak company grew rapidly, driven by Eastman's understanding that success lay not in selling expensive equipment to a small group of experts, but in selling simple equipment to millions of ordinary people. He invested heavily in advertising, creating desire for a product most people had never imagined they needed. The advertisements showed families, tourists and hobbyists enjoying photography without struggle or frustration. The message was clear: photography was no longer difficult, and everyone should be doing it. Other manufacturers watched Eastman's success and began producing their own simple cameras and roll film systems. Competition flourished, prices decreased, and cameras became smaller and more convenient. By the turn of the century, pocket-sized cameras were available, and photography had truly become a popular pastime. Department stores sold cameras alongside other consumer goods. Photography magazines catered to amateur enthusiasts. Photo finishing services opened in cities and towns across America and Europe. Eastman himself became wealthy beyond imagination, but he was known for his systematic philanthropy, eventually giving away most of his fortune to educational institutions, medical research, and community projects. He remained focused on making photography simpler and cheaper, introducing the Brownie camera in 1900 for just $1. This plain cardboard box camera brought photography within reach of children and working-class families who could never have afforded earlier equipment. The cultural impact of this democratization was profound. For the first time in human history, ordinary people could create permanent visual records of their own lives from their own perspectives. Family albums appeared in homes across the social spectrum. People could document not just how they looked in formal studio settings, but how they actually lived, what they did, and who mattered to them. Personal memory acquired a new precision and permanence. Photography was no longer merely a way to record what things looked like. It was becoming a medium of personal expression, social documentation, and memory preservation available to everyone. The button that Eastman invited people to press was opening a door to a new kind of seeing and remembering, one that would reshape human culture in ways that even the optimistic inventor from Rochester could barely imagine. As photography became something everyone could do, the next challenge would be capturing not just the forms and shapes of the world, but its colors as well. With photography now in the hands of ordinary people, thanks to George Eastman's innovations, photographers began dreaming of something that had eluded them since the medium's inception. The world appeared in glorious color to the human eye, yet photographs remained stubbornly monochrome, rendering sunsets, flowers, and human complexions in gradations of gray. This limitation seemed almost cruel, a fundamental gap between vision and record. The quest to capture color would occupy some of photography's most inventive minds for decades. The desire for color photographs emerged almost immediately after photography's announcement in 1839. Some photographers tried to circumvent the limitation through hand coloring, carefully applying pigments to daguerreotypes and paper prints with fine brushes. These tinted photographs offered a suggestion of color, though they remained paintings applied to photographic surfaces rather than true color photographs. The challenge lay in making the photographic process itself respond to the different wavelengths of colored light, distinguishing red from blue from yellow through chemical means. Early experimenters understood that color photography would require capturing 3 separate images, each recording a different primary color. In the 1850s and 1860s, several photographers attempted to photograph subjects through colored filters, creating separate records of the red, green, and blue components of a scene. The Scottish physicists James Clerk Maxwell demonstrated this principle in 1861, projecting 3 filtered photographs through corresponding colored lights to recreate a color image of a tartan ribbon. This additive color method proved the concept was sound, but the technology to make it practical remained frustratingly distant. The problem facing 19th-century experimenters was immense. Photographic emulsions of the era were sensitive primarily to blue and ultraviolet light, nearly blind to the red end of the spectrum. Photographing through a red filter produced almost nothing, making it impossible to record the full range of colors. Additionally, any practical color process would need to be simple enough for working photographers to use, not just laboratory demonstrations requiring precise alignment of multiple images. Progress came gradually through improved understanding of light-sensitive chemistry. In the 1870s, researchers discovered that adding certain dyes to photographic emulsions could extend their sensitivity to other colors, a process called sensitization. Hermann Wilhelm Vogel in Germany found that dyes could make silver compounds respond to yellow, green, and eventually red light. These orthochromatic and later panchromatic emulsions opened new possibilities, allowing photographic materials to record the full spectrum of visible colors. The breakthrough that brought color photography within reach of ordinary photographers came from an unexpected source in France. Auguste and Louis Lumière, brothers already famous for their contributions to motion pictures, announced their autochrome process in 1907. Their elegant solution to the color problem involved coating glass plates with microscopic grains of potato starch, dyed red, green, and blue-violet. These millions of tiny colored dots, randomly distributed across the glass, acted as color filters. When light passed through these grains and exposed the photographic emulsion beneath, each grain recorded the intensity of its particular color in the scene. The autochrome process created images of remarkable beauty. When viewed, light passing back through the colored starch grains recreated the colors of the original scene, producing soft, luminous photographs that seemed to glow from within. The random pattern of colored grains gave autochromes a distinctive pointillist appearance, like paintings by Seurat or Signac come to life. Early morning light, the colors of gardens, children's clothing, and exotic lands appeared in their actual hues for the first time in photographic history. Photographers embraced autochromes despite their limitations. The process required long exposures because light had to pass through the colored filter grains before reaching the emulsion, making it difficult to photograph moving subjects. Each autochrome plate was unique, a transparency that needed to be viewed by transmitted light or projected without the possibility of making prints. The plates were also expensive, costing significantly more than black and white materials. Nevertheless, for those who could afford them, autochromes offered a revelation. The French banker Albert Kahn commissioned photographers to travel the world, creating autochromes between 1909 and 1931, building an archive of more than 70,000 color photographs, documenting cultures and landscapes across the globe. These images preserve colors that would otherwise exist only in faded memory. The actual blue of a Moroccan doorway, the precise shade of a Chinese merchant silk robe, the colors of French village gardens before the First World War, while autochromes represented additive color, using colored filters to recreate hues. Other inventors pursued subtractive color methods. These processes layered dyes that absorbed certain colors while allowing others to pass through. The same principle used in color printing, the subtractive approach, promised better color reproduction and the possibility of making prints on paper rather than requiring special viewing conditions. Several subtractive color processes emerged in the 1910s and 1920s, with varying degrees of success. These methods typically involved creating separation negatives through colored filters, then combining layers of cyan, magenta, and yellow dyes to recreate the original colors. The technical challenges were formidable, requiring precise registration of multiple layers and stable dyes that wouldn't fade. Early results often suffered from color shifts, complications in processing, or impermanence. The breakthrough came when researchers at the Eastman Kodak Company developed Kodachrome film in the 1930s. Introduced commercially in 1935, Kodachrome used a revolutionary approach that embedded 3 layers of emulsion in a single piece of film, each layer sensitive to a different primary color. During complex processing, dyes were introduced that coupled with the exposed silver in each layer, creating a full color image with remarkable accuracy and stability. For the first time, photographers could load color film into their cameras just as they would black and white, capturing color images with relative ease. Kodachrome slides became treasured possessions, projected in darkened living rooms to share vacation memories and family celebrations. The film's rich, saturated colors and fine grain quality made it a favorite of professional photographers and serious amateurs for decades. Other color film processes followed, including Agfa color and eventually Kodacolor, which allowed color prints to be made on paper. Color photography transformed slowly from expensive novelty to standard practice. Through the 1940s and 1950s, color remained more costly than black and white, used primarily for special occasions and important assignments. Gradually, as processes improved and prices declined, color became the expected norm. By the late 20th century, Black and white photography had become the artistic choice, while color was simply how most people photographed their world. The journey from the first gray images to full-color reproduction had taken more than a century, requiring advances in chemistry, optics, and manufacturing. Yet the patient work of countless inventors and researchers had finally closed the gap between how humans saw the world and how cameras could record it, adding another dimension of reality to photography's frozen moments. With color photography slowly becoming practical, though still cumbersome and expensive for most users, the photographic world was ready for another transformation. This new revolution wouldn't come from chemistry alone, but from something equally powerful: speed and portability. The cameras and films of the early 20th century were about to set photography free from studios and tripods, allowing it to wander into the spontaneous, unpredictable moments of everyday life. For decades, photography had required patience. Even after exposure times shortened from hours to seconds, cameras themselves remained substantial instruments. Large format cameras with their bellows and glass plates demanded deliberate setup. Photographers composed their images carefully, asked their subjects to hold still, and captured scenes with formality and intention. But as the 19th century gave way to the 20th, innovators began imagining something different: photography that could move as quickly as life itself. The key innovations came from multiple directions simultaneously. Film manufacturers developed emulsions far more sensitive to light than earlier versions. These faster films meant photographers could capture images in dimmer conditions and with briefer exposures, fast enough to freeze motion that would have been merely a blur before. Lenses improved too, with better glass and more sophisticated designs that gathered more light and produced sharper images. But perhaps most significantly, cameras themselves began to shrink. In 1913, a German optical engineer named Oskar Barnack, working for the Lights Company, began experimenting with a radical idea. Motion picture film, 35 millimeters wide, had become standardized for the movie industry. Barnack wondered whether this compact film might work for still photography. The small format would allow much smaller cameras, yet the fine-grained films being developed could still produce acceptable enlargements. His prototype camera was compact enough to hold comfortably in two hands, a revolutionary departure from the bulky cameras photographers had always known. After delays caused by the First World War, the Lights Company introduced Barnack's creation commercially in 1925 as the Leica. This elegant, precisely engineered camera represented more than miniaturization. It offered a new philosophy of photography: quiet, unobtrusive, and quick to operate. The Leica enabled photographers to work without drawing attention, to respond instantly to fleeting moments, to become part of the scene rather than standing apart with elaborate equipment. The Leica found eager users among a new generation of photographers who saw possibilities beyond formal portraiture and carefully composed landscapes. In Paris, Berlin, New York, and cities around the world, photographers began wandering streets with these compact cameras, documenting the texture of urban life. They captured children playing, workers commuting, lovers meeting, strangers passing. Photography began revealing life as it actually unfolded, unposed and authentic. This approach became known as candid photography, though it went by other names too: street photography, documentary photography, photojournalism. Whatever the label, it represented a fundamental shift. Previously, photography had mostly shown what people wanted to display about themselves and their world. Now it could reveal what was actually there, including moments people might not have chosen to present for the camera. Henri Cartier-Bresson, a French photographer who began his career in the early 1930s, became perhaps the most influential practitioner of this new spontaneous photography. Armed with his Leica, Cartier-Bresson developed what he called the decisive moment, the instant when all visual elements in a scene aligned perfectly. He prowled the world with remarkable alertness, anticipating these fleeting alignments and capturing them with split-second timing. His images showed puddles reflecting jumping figures, geometric shadows intersecting with human forms, expressions caught in transition. Each photograph felt both carefully composed and utterly spontaneous, as though he had found rather than created the perfection in each frame. Other photographers embraced the freedom these faster, smaller cameras provided. André Curtis experimented with unusual angles and poetic observations of ordinary moments. Brassai photographed Paris after dark, revealing a nocturnal world of cafes and streets. Robert Capa brought dramatic immediacy to coverage of the Spanish Civil War and later conflicts, getting close to his subjects with a courage and intimacy that larger cameras would have prevented. The faster films that enabled this spontaneous photography kept improving through the 1930s and 1940s. Manufacturers competed to produce emulsions with higher sensitivity, allowing photography in increasingly dim conditions without flash. These films also captured motion more crisply, as their quicker response to light meant shorter exposures that froze movement previously too fast for cameras to record clearly. Publications recognized the power of these candid images. Picture magazines flourished in the 1930s, with Life magazine in America and Picture Post in Britain leading the way. These magazines understood that photography could tell stories as compellingly as written words. Photo essays became a new form of journalism, with sequences of images documenting everything from distant wars to local communities. Photographers weren't just illustrating articles anymore. They were creating visual narratives with their own power and meaning. The smaller cameras and faster films also changed how ordinary people approached photography. While the Brownie had made photography accessible decades earlier, these newer tools made it more versatile. Family photographers could capture children in motion, pets playing, spontaneous expressions rather than stiff poses. The visual record of daily life became more dynamic and natural, preserving not just how people looked but how they moved and interacted. Japanese camera manufacturers entered the market with enthusiasm, producing high-quality compact cameras that competed with German precision at lower prices. Canon, Nikon, and other companies that would later dominate photography began establishing their reputations during these years. Photography's center of gravity was shifting, becoming a truly global enterprise. As photography gained this new spontaneity and speed, it also gained new responsibilities and questions. When photographers could capture people unaware, what were the ethical boundaries? When images could be taken quickly in any situation, what should be photographed and what should remain private? These questions would only intensify as photography continued evolving, but they began in earnest during this era when cameras learned to move as quickly as life itself. The world was becoming more visual, more documented, more preserved through photography. Every day brought thousands of small moments frozen in silver, moments that might have vanished completely just a generation earlier. Photography had learned to dance, to run, to catch life in motion. The images it captured would never be quite the same again. By the early 20th century, photography had become faster, more portable, and more accessible than anyone in Daguerre's time could have imagined. Cameras documented news, preserved family memories, and recorded scientific observations. Yet a question lingered in certain circles, posed in galleries and salons where art was debated. Could photography truly be art? Or was it merely a mechanical process, a chemical trick that required no imagination, no soul, no creative vision? This question had been whispered since photography's earliest days. When daguerreotypes first appeared, some painters dismissed them as soulless copies of reality. The French poet Charles Baudelaire had called photography art's most mortal enemy, suggesting that the camera could only reproduce what already existed, never create something new. To many traditionalists, art required the human hand, the painter's brushstroke, the sculptor's touch. A machine that captured whatever stood before its lens seemed fundamentally different from the creative act of making art. But photographers themselves had other ideas. They had watched light dance across their ground glass screens, had waited for perfect moments, had made countless decisions about what to include and what to exclude from their frames. They knew that photography involved more than simply pressing a button. The question was how to convince the world that photography deserved a place alongside painting and sculpture in the realm of fine art. In the final years of the 19th century, a movement called pictorialism emerged, dedicated to establishing photography as an art form. These photographers believed that to be accepted as artists, They needed to make photographs that resembled paintings and drawings. They used soft focus lenses that created dreamy atmospheric images. They printed on textured papers that looked like canvas or watercolor paper. They sometimes drew or painted directly on their negatives and prints, adding clouds to skies or softening harsh details. The pictorialists often chose romantic subjects that echoed classical painting. Pastoral landscapes shrouded in mist, portraits of women in medieval dress, allegorical scenes staged like tableaus. They manipulated their images extensively during printing, dodging and burning to lighten or darken specific areas, scratching into negatives, combining multiple negatives to create composite images. The goal was to demonstrate that photography could be just as interpretive, just as personal as any other artistic medium. Among the most passionate advocates for photography as art was Alfred Stieglitz, an American photographer who had studied engineering in Germany before dedicating himself to the camera. In 1902, Stieglitz founded the Photosecession, a group of photographers committed to advancing photography's artistic status. He opened a small gallery at 291 Fifth Avenue in New York, known simply as 291, where he exhibited photographs alongside paintings and sculptures by modernist artists. Stieglitz's own photographs demonstrated remarkable technical mastery and artistic vision. His image of a New York street during a snowstorm, with a horse-drawn carriage emerging from the white flurry, captured both a specific moment and a timeless mood. His portraits revealed character and personality with remarkable depth. Through his exhibitions, publications, and tireless advocacy, Stieglitz gradually convinced critics and collectors that photographs could be collected, studied, and appreciated as works of art. Yet even as pictorialism gained acceptance, some photographers began questioning whether making photographs look like paintings was the right approach. Perhaps photography's artistic power lay not in imitating other media, but in embracing what made photography unique: its clarity, its detail, its directness, its connection to reality. Edward Weston became one of the most eloquent voices for this new approach, which came to be called straight photography. After years of making soft-focused pictorialist images, Weston underwent what he described as a conversion. He began making photographs of extraordinary sharpness and clarity, using a view camera with a small aperture that rendered every detail in perfect focus. He photographed simple objects, vegetables, shells, sand dunes, transforming them through careful composition and lighting into abstract forms of remarkable beauty. A green pepper in Weston's photograph became a sculpture of curves and shadows. The swirling patterns of sand dunes at Oceano became studies in light and form as elegant as any abstract painting. Weston believed in pre-visualization, in seeing the final print in his mind before releasing the shutter. He advocated minimal manipulation, arguing that the photographer's artistry lay in what happened before exposure, not in darkroom tricks afterward. Ansel Adams, who worked with Weston and shared his commitment to straight photography, developed a systematic approach he called the zone system. This technical method allowed photographers to precisely control exposure and development to achieve their creative vision. Adams's photographs of the American West, towering cliffs in Yosemite, weathered buildings in ghost towns, dramatic clouds over desert landscapes, combined technical perfection with emotional power. His images demonstrated that clarity and sharpness could convey feeling as effectively as any soft-focus romanticism. The debate between pictorialism and straight photography was never entirely resolved, because both approaches had merit. What mattered more than any particular style was the recognition that photography involved creative choices at every step. The photographer decided where to stand, when to release the shutter, how to frame the subject, how to expose the negative, and how to print the final image. These decisions could be as personal and expressive as a painter's choice of colors or a composer's selection of notes. In museums and galleries, photography gradually found its place. Collectors began acquiring photographs as they might acquire prints or drawings. Critics developed vocabularies for discussing photographic images, analyzing composition, tonality, and meaning. Universities created photography departments, where the medium was studied and taught alongside traditional fine arts. Some photographers explored photography's documentary power, finding artistry in honest observation of the world. Walker Evans photographed Depression-era America with straightforward dignity. Dorothea Lange's images of migrant workers combined social documentation with profound human empathy. Their work demonstrated that art and documentation were not opposites, but could intertwine, that recording reality with sensitivity and insight was itself a creative act. Others pushed photography into more experimental territories. Man Ray created photograms by placing objects directly on photographic paper and exposing them to light, making cameraless photographs. Laszlo Moholy-Nagy explored extreme angles and perspectives, photographing from above and below to transform familiar subjects into abstract compositions. These innovations expanded what photography could be, proving its versatility as a creative medium. The recognition of photography as art did not happen suddenly or completely. Even today, debates continue about photography's place in the artistic hierarchy, about which photographs deserve preservation in museums, about how to evaluate images made with ever-evolving technologies. But by the mid-20th century, the essential question had been answered. Photography was not art's enemy, but its companion, a medium with its own grammar, its own possibilities, with its own masters who could transform light and chemistry into images that moved the human heart and challenged the human mind. As photography established itself as both documentary tool and artistic medium, a fundamental challenge remained. The world did not obligingly pause during daylight hours alone. Evening gatherings, nighttime streets, indoor moments far from windows, all these scenes existed beyond the reach of early cameras that depended entirely on available light. Photographers who had learned to capture the subtlest gradations of natural illumination now turned their attention to a more volatile problem: how to bring their own light to the darkness. The earliest solution appeared spectacular and terrifying in equal measure. Flash powder, a mixture of magnesium metal combined with oxidizing agents, could produce an intensely bright burst when ignited. The chemical reaction released light powerful enough to illuminate even the deepest shadows for the fraction of a second needed to expose a photographic plate. Throughout the late 19th century, photographers carried these volatile powders to locations where natural light could not reach, creating images of mine shafts, caverns, and nighttime events that had previously existed beyond photography's grasp. The process required considerable courage. Photographers would measure the powder carefully into an open tray or holder, sometimes mounted on a pole or stand positioned near their subject. At the crucial moment, they would ignite the mixture, producing a brilliant white flare, accompanied by a sharp bang and a cloud of acrid smoke. The flash often startled subjects into wide-eyed expressions of alarm. More concerning, the powder occasionally ignited prematurely or burned too vigorously, causing fires, injuries, and occasional small explosions that left photographers with singed eyebrows and frightened subjects. Despite these hazards, flash powder expanded photography's possibilities dramatically. Scientists could document laboratory experiments and museum specimens. Explorers could photograph cave formations and archaeological discoveries. Society photographers could work at evening functions where gaslighting proved too dim for acceptable exposures. Jacob Riis, documenting the living conditions in New York tenements during the late 1880s and early 1890s, used flash powder to illuminate dark interior rooms that had never seen adequate sunlight, creating images that shocked viewers with their revelations of urban poverty. The search for safer alternatives occupied inventors throughout the early 20th century. The flash bulb, introduced in the 1920s, enclosed magnesium wire or foil inside a glass bulb filled with oxygen. When an electrical current passed through the wire, the magnesium burned brightly but safely inside its glass container. These bulbs could be synchronized with camera shutters, ensuring the flash peaked exactly when the shutter opened. Photographers no longer needed to juggle ignition and exposure separately, and the risk of unexpected combustion decreased significantly. Flash bulbs came in various sizes for different purposes. Small bulbs worked for casual snapshots. Larger bulbs, sometimes as big as household light bulbs, provided illumination for professional work. Each bulb worked only once, the filament consumed in a single brilliant burst, leaving a blackened remnant that photographers would unscrew and discard before inserting a fresh bulb for the next exposure. Despite this limitation, flash bulbs remained popular for decades, their reliability and relative safety making artificial light accessible to amateur photographers who would never have attempted flash powder. The night became a subject in itself for certain photographers who recognized darkness as more than mere absence of light. Arthur Fellig, better known by his nickname Ouija, prowled New York streets during the 1930s and 40s with a speed graphic camera and a trunk full of flashbulbs. He maintained a police radio in his car, often arriving at fires, accidents, and crime scenes before other photographers, sometimes before additional police officers. His flash illuminated moments of urban drama against pools of shadow, creating stark images where bright figures emerged from surrounding darkness. Ouija's photographs demonstrated how artificial light could become an expressive tool rather than merely a technical solution. His flash created harsh contrasts, deep shadows and theatrical lighting that seemed appropriate for the dramatic scenes he documented. The quality of electronic flash differed markedly from natural daylight, and photographers learned to use this difference intentionally, creating moods and emphasis impossible with ambient light alone. The electronic flash unit, developed during the mid-20th century, represented another fundamental advance. Instead of burning metal to produce light, electronic flash units stored electrical energy in capacitors, then released it through a gas-filled tube in an intensely bright but brief discharge. These units could be recharged and fired repeatedly, eliminating the need to carry boxes of single-use flashbulbs. Early electronic flash units were large and powered by heavy battery packs, but the technology improved rapidly, becoming smaller, more powerful, and more reliable. Electronic flash offered precise control over light duration and intensity. The flash duration could be remarkably brief, sometimes lasting only 1/1000th of a second or less, effectively freezing motion even faster than mechanical shutters. Photographers could stop splashing water droplets in mid-air, capture the exact instant a balloon burst, or document the fluid motion of dancers with absolute sharpness. This ability to freeze action with light rather than shutter speed opened new creative possibilities. The color temperature of electronic flash closely approximated daylight, making it compatible with color films balanced for outdoor photography. Photographers could use electronic flash indoors without the color casts that resulted from tungsten lighting. Multiple flash units could be synchronized, allowing photographers to build complex lighting arrangements that sculpted subjects with light and shadow, mimicking natural illumination or creating entirely artificial effects. As flash technology became more sophisticated, photographers developed techniques to soften and shape the light. Reflectors bounced flash off ceilings or walls, spreading illumination more naturally than direct flash. Diffusers scattered the light, reducing harsh shadows. Fill flash supplemented natural light, rather than replacing it, brightening shadows while preserving the quality of ambient illumination. The artificial and natural could blend seamlessly. By the later decades of the 20th century, flash units had become compact enough to mount directly on cameras, with automatic exposure systems that calculated the correct flash intensity for each scene. Photography in darkness or difficult lighting situations became routine rather than exceptional. Wedding photographers could document entire ceremonies from dim church interiors to evening receptions. Photojournalists could work around the clock, no longer constrained by the sun's schedule. The conquest of darkness represented more than technical achievement. It demonstrated photography's continued evolution from capturing whatever light nature provided to actively shaping light itself. Photographers had become not merely observers waiting for favorable conditions, but creators who could illuminate their subjects according to their vision, working in any environment at any hour. The night, once impenetrable to cameras, had become as accessible as the brightest afternoon, its moments and mysteries now available to be frozen and preserved by photographers who carried their own portable suns. As photographers learned to illuminate the darkness with electronic flash, another revolution was quietly brewing in a laboratory in Massachusetts. This revolution would challenge one of photography's most fundamental requirements, the waiting. For more than a century, photographers had accepted a simple truth: capture the image, then wait to see what you had captured. Wait for the darkroom. Wait for the chemicals. Wait for the print to dry. Wait to discover whether the moment you thought you had frozen was truly there on paper, perfectly preserved, or disappointingly lost. Edwin Land found this waiting intolerable. On a winter vacation in Santa Fe, New Mexico, in 1943, he photographed his young daughter Jennifer. She asked a question that seemed perfectly reasonable to a 3-year-old mind. Why couldn't she see the picture right away? Land, a scientist who had already made his fortune with polarizing filters, found himself captivated by this child's impatience. Why indeed? What if a photograph could develop itself? The idea consumed him. Within hours, he had conceived the basic principles of instant photography. The challenge was extraordinary. Compress an entire darkroom into the space between 2 sheets of paper. Automate every step of the developing process and make it happen in daylight rather than darkness. The chemicals that normally required careful timing, precise temperatures, and complete darkness would need to work reliably inside a sealed envelope, triggered by nothing more than pulling the photograph from the camera. Land spent the next 4 years transforming this vision into chemistry. His approach was elegant in its complexity. When you pulled an instant photograph from a Polaroid camera, you weren't simply extracting a finished image, you were initiating a cascade of chemical reactions. The pulling motion broke open small pods of reagent, a thick jelly containing all the chemicals needed for development. Rollers inside the camera spread this reagent evenly between the negative and a receiving sheet, creating a temporary darkroom sandwich. In this thin chemical layer, development began immediately. Silver halide crystals exposed to light during the photograph became metallic silver, forming the dark areas of the image. The unexposed silver compounds dissolved in the reagent and migrated to the receiving paper, where different chemicals precipitated them as metallic silver again, creating the positive image. All of this happened in broad daylight, inside a sealed envelope, guided by the precise chemistry Land had orchestrated. On February 21, 1947, Land demonstrated his invention to the Optical Society of America in New York. He photographed members of the audience, then pulled the paper from the camera and began timing. 60 seconds later, he peeled the print apart to reveal a fully developed photograph. The audience, accustomed to the patient rhythms of traditional photography, responded with stunned silence, followed by enthusiastic applause. They had just witnessed something that seemed to violate the established rules of their art. The first Polaroid Land camera went on sale at Jordan Marsh department store in Boston in November 1948. The camera cost $89.75, expensive but not prohibitive. The film came in rolls that produced 8 sepia-toned prints. Customers had been promised they could pick up their cameras just before the Christmas shopping season. Instead, they encountered something unexpected. The entire first day's supply sold out in minutes. What Land had created was more than a technical achievement. He had transformed the psychological experience of photography. For the first time, a photograph could participate in the moment it recorded. You could take a picture at a birthday party and pass it around while the cake was still being served. You could photograph a baby's first steps and share the image while the child was still learning to walk. The photograph became part of the event rather than a later commemoration of it. Photographers quickly discovered other advantages. Scientists could document experiments and immediately verify they had captured what they needed. Police could photograph crime scenes and have images available during investigations within minutes rather than hours. Architects could photograph buildings and mark up the prints on site. Doctors could create instant medical records. Instant photography found applications everywhere patients had been a burden. Land continued refining his invention. In 1963, Polaroid introduced color instant film, extending the magic to full-spectrum photography. In 1972, the SX70 camera arrived, a marvel of engineering that folded flat when not in use and produced photographs that developed completely on their own, with no peeling required. You simply watched as the image emerged from blankness, colors strengthening and details sharpening over several minutes. The SX70 photographs were particularly enchanting to watch develop. At first, the print ejected from the camera showed only a faint blue-green haze. Then, like a memory gradually coming into focus, the image began to appear. Shadows darkened first, followed by midtones, and finally highlights. The colors shifted and settled. In 3 or 4 minutes, the transformation was complete. Many people found this gradual revelation more satisfying than traditional photography's sudden unveiling in the darkroom. You could witness the photograph being born. Artists discovered creative possibilities in instant photography. The immediacy allowed experimentation without the cost of processing failures. Some artists manipulated the still soft emulsion of developing Polaroids, creating painterly effects. Others used instant cameras to capture reference images for paintings or to document performances. The unique quality of Polaroid images, slightly softer and more saturated than conventional photographs, became an aesthetic choice rather than a technical limitation. Yet instant photography never completely replaced traditional film. The prints were more expensive per shot, and the image quality, though continuously improving, never quite matched the resolution and tonal range of carefully processed conventional photographs. Professional photographers used Polaroids as test shots, verifying lighting and composition before exposing precious large-format film, but relied on traditional materials for their final images. Still, Polaroid cameras occupied a special place in visual culture. They attended parties, documented family gatherings, and accompanied travelers. They sat in offices and workshops, ready to capture whatever needed immediate visual recording. The distinctive square format and white borders of Polaroid prints became iconic, instantly recognizable markers of casual, spontaneous photography. Edwin Land had answered his daughter's question. You could see the picture right away. In doing so, he had created a new kind of photograph, one that existed in the present tense rather than the past. These instant images changed how we thought about photographic time, collapsing the gap between capturing and seeing, between experience and memory. They were photographs that could still smell like the chemistry that created them. Images born warm from the camera, immediate and tangible in ways that seemed almost miraculous. As the 20th century moved toward its final decades, photography had reached an extraordinary level of refinement. Film emulsions could capture images in the dimmest light. Cameras had become compact and reliable. Processing laboratories could return finished prints within days or even hours. The chemical magic that had begun with Nixie's 8-hour exposure had evolved into a sophisticated dance of silver halides and chromogenic dyes. Yet even as film photography achieved this remarkable maturity, researchers in laboratories were exploring an entirely different way to capture light. The electronic eye began not with photographers, but with scientists studying television and astronomy. In 1969, researchers at Bell Laboratories were working on a device to improve video cameras. Willard Boyle and George Smith conceived of something they called a charge-coupled device, a silicon chip containing thousands of light-sensitive elements. When light struck these tiny sensors, it generated electrical charges that could be measured and stored. The brighter the light, the stronger the charge. By reading these electrical signals in sequence, an image could be created not from chemical reactions, but from patterns of electricity. These early charge-coupled devices captured images of poor quality compared to film. The resolution was coarse, the sensors could record only a limited range of brightness, and the equipment required to read and display the images was bulky and expensive. The first digital photographs looked grainy and crude. Few photographers imagined that this electronic approach could ever match the exquisite detail and subtle tonal gradations that fine-grain film delivered. Digital imaging seemed destined to remain in specialized scientific and industrial applications, far from the hands of artists and everyday picture-takers. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, however, the technology steadily improved. Engineers packed more light-sensitive elements onto each chip, increasing resolution. They refined the electronics that converted light into electrical signals, expanding the range of tones the sensors could capture. Computer memory became cheaper and more compact, making it practical to store the substantial amounts of data that digital images required. What had begun as a curiosity was gradually becoming viable. In 1975, an engineer at Kodak named Stephen Sasson built the first self-contained digital camera. It weighed 8 pounds and recorded black and white images onto a cassette tape, taking 23 seconds to capture a single photograph. The resolution was a mere 10,000 pixels, producing images far inferior to even the simplest film camera. Sasson demonstrated his invention within Kodak, but the company that had democratized photography with roll film saw no immediate commercial potential in this cumbersome electronic device. Film was profitable, reliable, and beloved by millions. Why replace something that worked so beautifully? Yet the evolution continued, driven by both technological possibility and emerging need. News organizations saw potential in digital imaging. A photograph that existed as electronic data could be transmitted over telephone lines, arriving at distant newsrooms in minutes rather than requiring physical transport. In 1990, Kodak released the DCS, a professional digital camera built on a Nikon film camera body with a digital sensor replacing the film. It cost more than $20,000 and captured images of just over 1 megapixel. But photojournalists recognized its revolutionary advantage: speed. Pictures from breaking news events could reach editors and readers with unprecedented immediacy. The heart of digital photography lay in how it translated continuous reality into discrete numbers. A digital sensor was divided into a grid of millions of individual light-detecting elements called pixels. Each pixel measured the brightness of light falling upon it, converting that light into a number. A bright area generated a high number, a dark area a low one. Color required more complexity, achieved by placing tiny red, green, and blue filters over different pixels, or by other ingenious arrangements that allowed the sensor to distinguish wavelengths. These millions of measurements created a map of light and color that, when displayed on a screen or printed, reconstituted the scene the lens had captured. Unlike film, which recorded information continuously across its surface in layers of chemical emulsion, digital images were fundamentally discrete, broken into individual measurements. This brought profound differences. Digital images could be copied infinitely without degradation, each duplicate identical to the original. They could be instantly transmitted across networks. They could be manipulated pixel by pixel, with precision impossible in chemical darkrooms. They required no processing time, appearing on a screen immediately after capture. Photographers could review their work instantly, discarding failures and refining their approach on the spot. As the 21st century began, digital cameras became affordable for ordinary consumers. The number of pixels on sensors climbed into the millions, matching and then exceeding the effective resolution of film. Compact digital cameras appeared in every electronics store, offering the convenience of reviewing images on built-in screens and storing hundreds of photographs on memory cards, smaller than postage stamps. The barriers between taking a picture and seeing the result dissolved completely. Traditional film manufacturers faced an existential challenge. Kodak, which had pioneered consumer photography, struggled to transition from its profitable film business to the digital realm. Fujifilm adapted by diversifying. Agfa's photography division eventually ceased operation. The great chemical companies that had refined silver halide emulsions found their expertise suddenly less valuable than understanding sensor technology and image processing algorithms. For photographers, the transition brought liberation from certain constraints and the loss of familiar rituals. But darkroom, that dim sanctuary where images emerged in chemical baths, became obsolete for most practitioners. The careful discipline of limited exposures disappeared when memory cards could hold thousands of images. The anticipation of waiting for processed film was replaced by instant feedback. Some mourned these losses, feeling that photography had lost something essential in abandoning its chemical origins. Others celebrated the new possibilities, the ability to experiment without the cost of wasted film, the power to see results immediately and adjust accordingly. The fundamental principle remained unchanged. Whether captured by silver halides reacting to light or by silicon sensors converting photons to electrical charges, photography still meant preserving a moment, stopping time, creating a lasting record of how light appeared at a particular instant. The magic of seeing a scene transformed into an image retained its wonder, even when electrons replaced chemistry. Digital photography eliminated the physical negative, that tangible master copy from which prints were made. Now the original existed as a pattern of ones and zeros, stored magnetically or electronically, invisible and intangible. This brought new fragilities and new strengths. Digital files could be lost in computer crashes or corrupted by errors, yet they could also be backed up infinitely, preserved in multiple locations simultaneously, potentially more permanent than any physical negative. As digital sensors and electronics continued their relentless improvement, even the most dedicated film photographers acknowledged that the transition was complete. By the end of the first decade of the new century, film had become a specialty medium, still valued by some for its particular aesthetic qualities, but no longer the dominant form of photography. The two-century reign of chemical imaging had given way to electronic capture, transforming photography as profoundly as Eastman's roll film had once transformed the daguerreotype. The world of photography was about to change again, but this time the revolution would arrive in our pockets, carried everywhere we went, ready to capture any moment at any time. The transition from film to digital sensors had freed photography from chemical processing, but it still required a dedicated camera, a separate device to carry and remember to bring along. The next transformation would make that distinction disappear entirely. In the year 2000, a camera phone created by Sharp appeared in Japan. The JSH04 featured a modest 0.11 megapixel sensor, capable of capturing images at 256 by 256 pixels by the standards of even basic digital cameras of that era. These specifications seemed almost comically limited, but something profound was beginning. The camera was now joining the one device that people carried everywhere, checked constantly, and kept within arm's reach, even while sleeping. Photography was about to become not just portable, but perpetually present. The integration of cameras into mobile phones accelerated rapidly. Each year brought improvements, more megapixels, better lenses, and increasingly sophisticated software. By the time Apple introduced the iPhone in 2007, bringing an intuitive touchscreen interface to the camera phone concept, the technology had matured enough that millions of people began leaving their dedicated cameras at home. The convenience of having an always available camera began to outweigh the quality advantages of standalone devices for everyday photography. The numbers tell an extraordinary story. In 1999, approximately 80 billion photographs were taken worldwide in a year, nearly all on film. By 2015, that number had exploded to over 1 trillion images annually, with the vast majority captured on mobile phones. By 2020, estimates suggested that 1.4 trillion photographs were being taken each year. Photography had transformed from a deliberate act requiring specialized equipment into a casual, constant accompaniment to daily life. The implications rippled outward in unexpected directions. Cameras became witnesses to events large and small. A phone pulled from a pocket could document a traffic accident for insurance purposes, capture a celebrity sighting, record a child's first steps, or preserve the specific arrangement of items before moving furniture. The photographable moment expanded to include everything. The mundane alongside the momentous. Social media platforms emerged to give these billions of images a destination and an audience. Flickr launched in 2004 as a place to share and organize photographs. Facebook, expanding beyond its college origins in the mid-2000s, became a vast repository of personal images. Instagram, introduced in 2010, built its entire existence around photographic sharing, adding filters that mimicked the look of vintage film stocks and classic cameras. Snapchat arrived in 2011, with photographs designed to disappear after viewing, addressing growing concerns about permanent digital records. These platforms didn't just store photographs, they fundamentally altered photographic behavior. Images were no longer captured primarily for personal memory or physical albums. They became communication, conversation, and social currency. A photograph of a meal served to share an experience with distant friends. A selfie, that peculiar modern descendant of the self-portrait tradition stretching back centuries, became a way of saying, "I am here, I exist, I matter." Photographs became performative, documenting not just what people saw, but how they wished to be seen. The ubiquity of cameras changed the relationship between events and their documentation. Concerts and performances now flickered with hundreds of glowing screens held aloft, attendees simultaneously experiencing and recording. Historical moments that once might have had a handful of photographic perspectives now accumulated thousands of images from every angle. When events of significance occurred, the first instinct for many became to raise a phone and begin recording. This democratization of image-making fulfilled, in ways beyond imagination, George Eastman's vision of making photography accessible to everyone. But it also created new complexities. The authority of the photographer as a skilled specialist diminished when everyone was a photographer. The special significance of the photograph as a rare, carefully composed artifact shifted when thousands of images accumulated on a device, rarely reviewed, never printed, existing primarily as digital data. Professional photographers found themselves competing not just with other professionals, but with billions of amateurs armed with increasingly capable devices. Photojournalists discovered that breaking news often arrived first from ordinary citizens who happened to be present with their phones. The first images of significant events, from natural disasters to political protests, increasingly came from participants and witnesses rather than professional observers. Yet the very abundance of images created a paradox. With unlimited capacity to take photographs at essentially no cost per image, people photographed more but perhaps valued individual images less. The careful consideration that once went into composing a shot when film was limited gave way to capturing dozens of versions of the same scene. The anticipation of waiting for film to be developed and prints to be made dissolved into instant review and immediate deletion of unwanted images. The technical quality achievable by phone cameras continued to surprise skeptics. Computational photography, using software to enhance and combine multiple exposures, allowed tiny phone sensors to produce results that rivaled much larger camera systems in many situations. Night modes stitched together several frames to create clear images in near darkness. Portrait modes used software to simulate the selective focus, previously requiring large apertures and long lenses. The distinction between optical and computational processes blurred. Storage and organization presented new challenges that previous generations of photographers never faced. A lifetime of family photographs once filled a few albums. Now a single person might accumulate tens of thousands of images within a few years. Cloud services offered to store these massive collections, trading physical space for ongoing subscriptions and raising questions about permanence and access. What happened to these photographs if a service closed or a password was forgotten? The culture of photography shifted from scarcity to abundance, from preservation to performance, from memory to communication. Yet beneath these transformations, something essential remained constant. People still raised cameras to their eyes, or now to arm's length, because they wanted to hold on to something fleeting. The technology had changed completely, but the human impulse persisted. This moment matters. This sight deserves preserving. This light should not vanish completely when it fades. As camera phones continued evolving and social platforms refined their features, photography had become so woven into daily existence that its presence felt almost invisible, as natural as speaking or writing. The cameras were everywhere now, waiting in billions of pockets and bags, ready to capture the extraordinary and the ordinary alike, creating a vast, constantly expanding visual record of human experience. The journey of photography, from those first grainy images that required hours of sunlight, to the billions of pictures captured every day on devices we carry in our pockets, represents one of humanity's most remarkable technological and cultural transformations. As we arrive at this moment in time, nearly 2 centuries after Nietz pointed his camera out that window in France, we find ourselves living in a world saturated with images, yet still discovering new ways this medium shapes how we experience reality. Photography changed something fundamental about human consciousness. Before the camera, memory was the only way to preserve a moment. And memory, as we know, is fluid and unreliable. Our minds edit and reshape the past, blending what happened with how we felt and what we later learned. Photography offered something different, a trace of light itself, captured and fixed. The photograph became a kind of proof, evidence that a moment had existed exactly as shown. This changed not just how we remember, but how we think about time itself. The technology that began with metal plates and toxic chemicals evolved into a process so instantaneous and effortless that we barely notice it happening. Yet underneath all the changes, whether we're talking about daguerreotypes or smartphone cameras, the fundamental principle remains the same. Light reflects off the world around us, passes through a lens, and creates an image. What changes is how we capture and preserve that image, but the magic of light itself remains constant. Consider what photography has given us beyond personal memories. It created entirely new ways of seeing that were impossible before. Magnified photographs revealed worlds too small for the naked eye. Astronomical photographs showed us distant galaxies and the birth of stars. High-speed photography froze moments that happened too quickly for human perception, revealing the beauty in a splash of water or the instant a bullet passes through an apple. Photography extended our vision beyond its natural limits, making visible what was always there but never seen. The medium also created new forms of truth-telling and new forms of manipulation. A photograph could document injustice, revealing conditions that words alone might fail to convey. Images of poverty, war, and environmental destruction have motivated social change precisely because they transform abstract problems into visible, undeniable realities. Yet photographs can also mislead, whether through careful cropping, staging, or digital manipulation. The tension between photography as objective record and photography as subjective interpretation has existed since the beginning, and it continues to evolve in our current era of digital editing and artificial intelligence. Photography transformed how we relate to history. Before cameras, our knowledge of the past came from written accounts, paintings, and artifacts. These sources told us about the past, but photographs showed us the past, or seemed to. Looking at Civil War photographs or early images of distant countries, we experience an uncanny sense of connection across time. We see faces, expressions, details of daily life rendered with an immediacy that makes the past feel suddenly close. This visual record of history continues to accumulate, creating an ever-growing archive of human experience across cultures and continents. The democratization of photography, which accelerated dramatically with digital technology and camera phones, has created a form of collective memory, unlike anything that existed before. Millions of people document their lives in photographs, creating personal archives that would have been unimaginable to earlier generations. Events are captured from dozens of angles simultaneously. Places are photographed constantly, creating layers of visual documentation that show how they change over time. This vast ocean of images represents a new kind of cultural memory, distributed across billions of devices and online platforms. Yet something interesting happens as photographs become more abundant. The easier it becomes to take pictures, the less precious each individual image might seem. When photographs required effort, expense, and skill, people approached them with intention. Each exposure mattered. Now we can take dozens of shots in seconds, knowing we'll delete most of them. The photograph has become less like a carefully crafted object and more like a form of visual note-taking, a way of marking moments we might want to return to later. Some worry this abundance diminishes photography's meaning, while others see it as simply a different kind of meaning, one based on quantity and accessibility, rather than scarcity and preciousness. The future of photography continues to unfold in unexpected directions. Computational photography, where software creates images by combining multiple exposures and using algorithms to enhance results, blurs the line between capturing and creating. Three-dimensional photography and virtual reality offer new ways to record and experience spaces. Yet through all these innovations, the core impulse remains recognizable. We still want to preserve moments, to hold on to the fleeting present as it dissolves into the past. Photography reminds us that light itself carries information. Every photon that bounces off a surface and enters a camera lens or strikes our retina is a messenger, carrying news about the shape and texture and color of the world. Photography is simply a way of catching those messengers and preserving their message. The technology changes, becoming more sensitive, more convenient, more sophisticated, but the underlying miracle of captured light remains. As you drift towards sleep, consider how photography has given us a different relationship with time and memory. It has allowed us to freeze moments, to revisit the past, to see what we might otherwise have missed. It has shown us ourselves from outside, creating a kind of mirror that reflects not just this instant, but preserves it for future viewing. Photography has made the temporary permanent, or at least more lasting than it would otherwise be. The story of photography is really the story of light itself, and light continues its ancient work of illuminating our world, whether we capture it or simply let it pass. The photographs we've made and will continue to make are simply traces of that endless stream of light, momentarily caught and held, small pieces of time preserved against the current that carries everything forward into tomorrow. In this sense, every photograph is a small victory against impermanence, a way of saying that this moment, this light, this view of the world mattered enough to preserve, and in the morning, when you wake, that same light will be there again, ready to reveal the world anew, whether you choose to capture it or simply let it illuminate another day. As we bring to a close our journey through the story of photography, from the first chemical experiments that captured light to the cameras that changed how we preserve our memories, we hope these quiet tales of invention and discovery have gently carried you toward rest. Thank you for joining us on this peaceful exploration of how humanity learned to freeze time itself. If these calm adventures have brought you comfort, we'd love to have you with us again. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. And now, as the night deepens and your mind settles, we wish you the sweetest of dreams. Good night, fellow dreamer, and may your sleep be restful and your dreams be kind.